Welcome to Jacket Jockeys with Justin.
And me
Hey, we're back.
with a deep dive into something that also has a jacket in it.
Uh,
Right?
is that a
Right?
connection?
Yeah, there were people in
People
jackets.
in jackets?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Uh,
There were also bees.
Bees.
Although that was a wasp nest, but those were bee actors.
Oh, did they
Factors.
fuck up
Yeah.
the?
Yeah. I'm not
I
a
see.
bugologist,
Uh,
but
it's funny because they could have just made a fake one. I don't know why they would get the wrong thing, but anyway.
well, I think it's like they wanted them to be wasps, but
Yeah, but
they
when
so really they
for the scene
yeah.
where they show them, it was easier to
Yeah.
have bees
That's my
trains.
that's my theory.
Yeah, that would make sense actually, because yeah, wasp would be more.
Much more
Uh,
dangerous to
yeah,
handle. You really don't want
a
wasps
big ass
on
wasp
the
nest in your face while you're
yeah.
taking a wicked dump.
Yeah, well, for sure, you don't want a bee nest in your face either. But my thing is like you want to have that thing at the end of the movie that says no one was harmed in the filming of this,
Mhm.
and that's simply not going to happen if you invite a bunch of wasps onto the set.
Yeah,
They'll kill you,
right, right,
as we saw
right.
in the film.
Literally in that way.
Wait, speaking of what film, what are we talking
Oh,
about?
what are we talking about? Well, we're talking
A
about
highbrow piece of
cult
cinema.
classic from 1983, a little slasher, low budget independent called Sleepaway Camp. It's very much
Yeah.
in the naissance, if you will, of the slasher boom of the '80s. At
Yes.
this point, we're after Halloween and Friday the 13th, but we're
But
before
before
Nightmare on Elm
Christmas.
Street. What?
Sorry. I said before Christmas. I'm sorry. That wasn't funny.
Oh.
After Halloween and Friday the 13th, but
Oh,
before
because they're all
Christmas.
day things. Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah. It's
yes.
after Black Christmas,
Actually,
but anyway.
yeah, we're filming this like a week after Friday the 13th and
Oh yeah, you're
just
right.
a
I
few
guess if
days
there's a
before
Friday the
Christmas.
20th, there's automatically a Friday the 13th.
Indeed, it happened. It
Yeah,
was.
yeah. Interesting. I didn't really think about that.
Yeah, so this is
Not
from back
relevant
in a
to
time,
this
not
movie,
relevant.
but
No.
that's
No,
fine.
but
It is a summer camp thing. I do think the summer camp setting is Friday the 13th's like
yes.
claim to fame. And this is
Yes.
definitely picking up on that idea.
Yes.
And I think they're both in Jersey as well.
Yes, most of New Jersey, if it's not industrial, is summer camp.
Yeah. So I
And
feel this is more Jersey than Friday the 13th
yeah,
is.
it's pretty
The
Jersey.
Jersey accents are very strong in this one.
And the Jersey Toots,
And the tunes, for
like
sure.
really, oh man, I love seeing children just really intensely cuss at each other.
There's a lot of children cursing in
Um,
this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so this was set at a time. So you mentioned a little bit about the cinematic history in terms of sleepaway camps. This dates to an era before um before things like health department inspections about what should be happening in kitchens
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
before things like criminal background checks
Sure.
and prohibitions on pedophiles working and actively pedophiling at summer camps. Now, some of you might say that's not a funny thing to joke about, and I would say you're right. It's not a funny thing to joke about. But wow, oh wow, this
Well,
movie comes in hot.
it
Um,
does. It does. It definitely slaps you in the face right
now,
away.
I have a disclaimer on I think it was our last Jacket Jockeys. But I have a disclaimer for this one too,
Oh,
which
okay.
is that
Do tell.
there is a spoiler alert. Don't listen to this if
Yeah,
you
please,
don't,
please.
yeah, just
If you have any remote interest in this kind of thing,
watch it first.
I think
Always
you'll get
watch it
something out of
first.
this movie, even if you don't like it. It's pretty special. I've really never seen anything like this,
Yes.
and so I
Yes.
feel it's worth at least a watch. So yeah,
Yeah.
check it out. And there's big surprises in it, so you definitely don't want to just listen to us talk about it
Yeah.
before.
And so that is not actually my disclaimer.
Anyway, go ahead.
That was like my disclaimer that prefaced my
You needed to
disclaimer.
give
My
it
disclaimer
first. Yeah,
is
disclaimer for the disclaimer.
now that you've paused and watched the movie and you're back here, trans people are not psychopathic and they are not violent. that is a well-trodden stereotype that is not constructive or supported by research. So that's my
Yes.
and so I can imagine some people having a you know, a sort of an ethical opposition to this movie because of that aspect of sort of the explanation of what's going on here. So I just want to say that I'm not unaware of the social context of demonization of non-cis, non-hetero characters in Hollywood,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I agree. Obviously, the movie's dated pretty severely, but I think the way it deals with these things is kind of interesting. And I should add a disclaimer that like I'm not anyone to speak with any authority on trans issues. So
Right.
please don't take my word for anything. It's just like what I think about the movie and, what I think personally, but it's not going to be anything too enlightening on that front.
Right. There probably is that podcast out there. This is not a social
Yeah.
critique of those dimensions.
Yeah.
I'm not a cinema studies
I mean, we'll
person.
talk about it, but
Yes, yes.
our point of view is limited in a way. Yeah, so I have listened to a lot of podcasts about this. I'm kind of obsessed with this movie, and I listened to this one that is called The Lady Killers, and it's a podcast where it's the premise is they do mostly horror movies, but sometimes it's like thrillers or whatever. Uh, you know, where the killer's a lady. Um, and it's two cis women, a trans woman, and a cis gay guy.
It's a
And
lot of people on a podcast.
yeah, it's four hosts, and they did a great. I would strongly recommend their podcast. It's not like overly politically oriented, but they do talk about the issue, and they refer to this someone on there referred to this as a rich text, and I really feel like that's strangely accurate for a movie that's like quite light in tone
Yeah.
and quite frivolous for a lot of the time. It's
Yeah.
that's what's interesting to me about it. Like the vibe of the movie is very silly a lot of the times. I mean, even the murders are kind of silly.
Yeah, it gets pretty over the top. The murders themselves are pretty silly, and there's a murder really early on, and it feels like vigilante. Like a lot the murders up until a certain point feel vigilantic. Is that a word?
Yes. I mean,
Um
if it isn't, let's
Yeah, I think
coin it
everybody will know
now.
what I mean with that. But then at a certain point, it's like, holy shit, there's just like a lot of murders are happening. And it just gets kind of absurd.
Yeah.
And like the level of, it's funny, like some moments I wasn't sure if I was in on a joke with them or if it was like badly done. And I was laughing at like how like, especially where, there's one responsible adult in this whole movie. And it kind of reads as like, I know you're not supposed to see this movie as realistic, but it does sort of make you watching this, it's sort of like, yeah, it's really not a good idea to have near peer mentors in a sleepaway camp. But it's not even just that. The ostensible adults are like, oh my man, it's a fucking mess.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah.
It's a big mess. Yeah, I can't say that I would want to be in an environment like this.
I went to sleepaway camp a
I
couple
did too
times. I don't remember it being
once.
like this. There
It
weren't any
wasn't.
murders, or if there
No.
were, they were covered up better
The Mel kept them
than
quiet.
yeah.
Did a better job.
Yeah.
It's like he's like this Jaws type, the mayor from Jaws.
Yeah.
Like that's his function is to be like, no, we got to keep us quiet. Like with the people are gonna freak out. I'm gonna, I gotta, it's all about the money. You know, we got to
Yeah.
keep the tourists happy. We got to keep the parents happy. We got to keep the kids here and all that.
Yeah.
Pushing things to the point, you know, until it gets to the point where
It's
it's
just
like, okay,
complicated.
it's obviously. But I do think that, I mean, we can talk through it. It is like, as I go through the scenes, I mean, I know a lot of these characters. I have watched this several times, but there's quite a few like small characters, and I do lose track of like who's who in the like B tier
Yeah.
characters. It's like, I don't know that guy. Like, I don't
Yeah, I'm really
remember.
bad with names,
Uh,
as everybody who's ever listened to this podcast knows.
yeah, so I know some of the names. Anyway, I'm gonna struggle with specifics on a few of them because of that problem. But I do think, generally speaking, if you look at the victims in this, they are all people who wronged Angela in one way or another,
Yeah.
including the kids. It's a very small point, and it's ridiculous that this merited murder. But when Meg throws her into the water and she's coming out, they throw sand at her.
Oh, those are the kids.
Those are the kids. You see the guy there too, Eddie or whatever, like he's right there too,
Yeah,
like, with them, so you know it's the same
remember.
kids.
I figured that there was a thing, but there was
Very
those
small.
kids, and I just missed it.
It's like they
There are a lot of really shitty. I know kids can be really shitty to one another, but there are a lot of really shitty kids in this.
Yes. Yeah. There's a ton of bullying and
Yeah,
you know,
Meg and Judy, like, shut that down. You cannot have that kind of dynamic. Like, you
yeah.
manage people.
Well, Meg's
You
actually a
can't have-
counselor.
I know. That's part of the thing about this like near peer thing. It breeds really. I mean, it can be really great, obviously, when the adult or the older, the counselors are like mature, but yeah. It's bad news.
Yeah. Yeah.
The fashion's amazing.
Oh my. Oh, the midriffs and the
yeah.
booty shorts.
And of course, Friday the 13th is
Men only, by the way.
men only, yeah. Friday the 13th is clearly the main, thing to compare it to, but
Yes.
it was also like really, I always think of Wet Hot American Summer.
Yeah. Oh, I think this was a huge influence on that.
Yeah, and the fashion very similar.
Oh yeah, and I think that's part of what they were pulling from.
Yeah.
For sure. I think they said that specifically.
Okay, that makes
Because
sense.
yeah, that's the thing, right? It's like
Yeah.
part of it is sitting in that like over the top, almost parody zone, you know? And it's like it's weird because other times it does seem serious.
Mhm.
I do think in general it's very heightened and like kind of cartoonish.
Yeah.
Which is part of what I like about it.
Yeah.
You know, it gives it this strangeness.
The incredible way that people scream and they
Oh.
just keep screaming.
Oh man.
And there will be scenes that are way longer than would
Yeah.
in now recording this like 40 some odd years later,
Yeah.
where
right.
like the attention spans are so short.
Yeah, that baseball game goes on
The baseball
so
game,
long.
I love it, and nothing comes
It
of
doesn't matter at all. It's
It's
totally irrelevant.
Yeah, but it's like it's charming.
It is,
like
and it
this
contains
softball
probably one of my
game.
perhaps my favorite line of the movie, which is "Eat shouldn't die, Ricky. Eat shouldn't live, Bill."
I love that. That is a serious comeback. Like,
It really is.
it's like, wow.
It's a great line.
Wow.
It's a great line. And yeah, like that's the thing. I think that's why it's so interesting to me because it just juggles these tones in a weird way. And like I said earlier, like off the podcast, like I don't know how much of this is intentional.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to say, but I do think it came together in like a surprisingly effective way. Like it stands alone. I really have not seen there is no slasher that I've ever seen that's really anything like this.
Yeah.
Even though it clearly is building on those traditions and tropes and so on, you know? So
Yeah.
it just really stands out. So like I mean, yeah, what can I even say in general? I don't know. Uh I uh it's I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah. I mean, should we dive?
We can get into the scenes and then
dive into the
I will have my because like I'm wanting to say all this specific stuff and I'm like, well, I could just
Yeah.
talk about it when we get to the scenes. Um,
Whatever you think is best. I mean,
because
I
I have a lot about specific
yeah,
scenes.
you've been obsessed with this movie for a while.
Yeah, yeah. I originally saw this like, I don't know, it's like maybe like 7 years ago or so, something like that. I was doing some internet research and try to catch up on my horror canon. And yeah, this is an odd duck in there. If you watch like um those classic ones, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, like they're pitched like much more seriously. The violence is stronger for sure, even though like technically what happens in here, there's some violence, but it's somehow muted. They don't usually show the actual violence happening, they show the aftermath,
Yeah.
or it's sort of hidden in various ways. Like it seems like they were like dialing it back,
Yeah.
which again like kind of softens the movie and like makes it feel more like kind of a silly slasher parody almost.
Yeah, yeah. It's more enjoyable of a watch than some of those movies,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. I mean, I
Um,
enjoy them, but they're
but less
definitely
suspense. I mean, it's
less
not that
fun.
suspenseful.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not as scary as some of them can
Yeah,
be.
it's like a comedic horror revenge kind of thing. I
Yeah,
mean, like somewhat comedic.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think anytime you have kids like calling each other like motherfucking shitheads for like throwing a water bottle. I mean, that's just funny, right? Like, I don't know.
I
They
love
have to have been intending humor with this just over the top cussing.
I love when they do that shaving cream gag
Yeah.
on Mozart, and then he grabs the knife and goes, "I'll fucking kill you."
He's chasing around with a Bowie knife.
And the counselor walks in, it's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And then Ricky's like, "Oh, come on, give him a break. He was just playing around." I'm like, "Really?
Yeah.
Was he?
Yeah.
Are you sure?"
No, I thought that was great. Yeah, and taking the time for those scenes, and that's the other thing that I think is nice about the movie is that like the softball scene, that scene, there's a fair number of scenes that are not directly linked to the central tension of the film.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. There's definitely a lot
and
of hanging out kind of
yeah,
stuff happening. Like it's that vibe. Like they're just doing camp activities and
yeah.
getting into hijinks, and there's like just a lot of silliness. And then the
Um,
occasional murder sprinkled
yeah.
in to
Yeah.
like keep that plot
But yeah,
moving.
to your point, I really like early on and the insight. I also like that it's not like Friday the 13th where it's like, oh, okay, so she came back to this sleepaway camp, or she came back to the sleepaway camp at this lake where it was the site of this
Yeah.
trauma in order to enact revenge.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
that's not, it's almost incidental
Yeah,
that it's the same camp.
we got to talk about it. There's
Yeah.
so many layers to that thing that and the movie leaves it open. And to me that's the other thing that's interesting about it. There's like several moments where it shows things, but I'm like, I like part of me is like, am I just too removed from the time to understand what is supposed to be the obvious point here? Or is it really as ambiguous as it seems? Because like sometimes I'm like, not really sure what you're saying here. Like,
Okay, interesting. Well, I look forward to finding
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely want to talk through
Um,
some of that stuff because that's some of the stuff that's like most interesting to me about it. Aside from like the fun part of the movie, which is not insignificant and not a small part of why I enjoy it and why I thought it was a good one to watch because I figured it would be, it would go down
yeah.
easier because a lot of it is like it. I mean, it's like legitimately funny
Yes. Yeah.
as a comedy, which is
Yeah.
kind of ridiculous, but it actually is. And so anyway, you ready to
I'm ready.
dive into
Yeah.
the scenes?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, so we open up with a credits montage of the camp with music. The camp's been abandoned, though we hear some sort of like ghost sounds of previous times in the background. And then at the end, we see it's blocked with a sheriff warning, and there's a for sale sign on Camp Arawak, which is going to be the setting. later. So
Mhm.
anyway, just a nice little opening credit sequence. I do feel like the opening sequence feels more serious than the movie actually
Yeah.
is. I don't know. It feels like it's gonna be
Yeah.
like this dark,
Well, and
like,
it
oh
really
my
it
god,
it
what
sets
happened?
exactly, it sets you up to think of this like, oh, there was something befell
Some
this
horrible
camp, and
thing
then it's been
happens.
reopened, which
Yeah,
is very much the Friday the 13th vibe.
exactly. Exactly. Then we move into the flashback slash origin story. It's a
Yeah.
little of both. Um, we have Angela and Peter, brother and sister. They're having an argument on the boat with their father, John. There's a motorboat with a water skier nearby. Angela asks if they can go to the camp and learn how, but the father says, I don't know about that. We see the motorboat and the water skier. There is a lifeguard driving a boat, but the girl sitting beside him wants to drive the boat. In a confusing turn of events, the kids make the father in the boat topple into the water. I
Yeah. There
wasn't
really
really,
should be like an after school special about don't do that, kids.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It plays like it's harmless, but actually, this is the sets the stage for the tragedy that's gonna
yeah.
occur here. Um, so
It's why you
um,
shouldn't have fun. Don't prank.
exactly. Don't have fun, kids. The lifeguard gives over control of the motorboat. The kids and John are still in the water.
This is so unhinged. This kid, like in the jet,
Yeah,
whatever that's called, like jet skiing. Is that what that's
water
called?
skiing.
Water skiing,
Yeah, I
like
think a jet ski
behind.
is when you're by yourself on the
Got
little,
it. Got it. Yeah. Oh my
machine.
God. Everything about it is just so, yeah.
It is, yeah. Yeah, it's fun. It's funny because you're right. Like, I do feel like I feel like that's part of the game the movie's playing is setting us up to think that the murders are sort of proxy revenge for this thing. Because I think that that's the camp. I have to admit that, like,
Yeah.
it's not 100% clear that it's the same camp.
Yeah. I mean, no, okay. I think that the heavy implication here is those are the camp. Yes, that's the camp.
Yeah,
Those are the counselors, and so like
yeah,
we're seeing the previous generation of totally
yeah,
irresponsible
exactly.
counselors
Exactly.
at that school. I mean, in this day and age, there is no sleepaway camp that would no insurance company would insure a camp that allowed jet skiing.
Yeah,
Sorry, what did you call it? Water skiing.
water skiing. Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
absolutely not. There were no motorboats at my camp. No, it was like you had to pass some sophisticated swim test just to go out on the
Yeah,
canoes.
well, it was the 70s in this flashback,
Yeah, right. The
technically.
kids were probably smoking in the cabins
I'm
too.
sure they were. Yeah, so it's like, right, like you let Jason, my boy, drown, like, and now I'm coming back
Yep.
for you. You know, like
Yeah.
it feels like it wants you to think that's what it's heading for.
Yeah. And like my father and brother were killed by
Yeah,
you reckless camp people, so
yeah,
I'm coming back here to
yeah.
refight. But no, there's not even a mention of that.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like it's hovering in the background, and like how much of that is the thing is something I want to return to later.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, so the kids and John are still in the water when Lenny, who's on the shore, calls out that Doc is going to be here soon. The kids acknowledge that this is Aunt Martha, but Ricky, cousin, will not be coming as he is, quote, spending the weekend with his father. I'm gonna go on and on about that in a
Hang
second.
on, say it again, that last verse. Ricky
Yeah, Ricky.
isn't coming because
He's, quote, spending the weekend with his father.
okay.
So I guess
Oh,
Aunt
that's
Martha's
Ricky.
ex-husband.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I
So
mean, Ricky is the
right.
cousin who,
Yeah.
goes to camp with Angela,
Yeah.
basically. Um, and so, okay. So the kids play in the water as the motorboat looms. The skier tries to warn them to no avail. The boat hits them. Lenny calls John. The skier yells. We see that one of the kids survived, but not John. And then we cut to 8 years later.
Yeah,
Um,
sorry. I am confused because I thought that this woman who like should have been written by John Waters had been I was thinking that her ex was one of these two guys.
yes. So this is precisely what I wanted to talk about.
Um
So I don't know if you remember this, but I played you a little clip that I thought was hilarious from How Did This Get Made, where they were going, it's a podcast. They did a podcast on this movie,
Okay.
and they were going round and round about the relationships between the characters.
Yeah.
Because if you don't pay attention, it is hard. It is hard to catch what it is. Okay, let me tell you what I think it is based on what we see here.
Okay.
Because I think if you pay close attention, it's actually clear what the relationships are.
Okay.
It's just like you gotta really listen carefully.
Okay.
Okay, so um so John is the kid's father. Their mother's gone. Who knows what happened to her? It's never addressed. Lenny is his boyfriend, I guess, as we learn later.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Aunt Martha,
It's the dog.
I guess is John's sister. I'm not 100% sure about that. It could be his wife's or whatever, the mother's sister. It could be. They don't really say one way or the other.
Okay.
And then her husband is clearly not Lenny because they specifically say that Ricky is spending the weekend with his father,
Yeah.
who can't
Who
be
can't
Lenny,
what it
who's
is.
right
Yeah.
there. Right.
Right.
So Aunt Martha is not married to Lydia. I agree that like it feels like that should be true, but I think it's not.
Yeah.
Actually. He's an unrelated
Yeah.
person.
Okay.
He's just involved with John. I think that's the only reason he's there.
Got it.
But I guess I feel like the subtext of when Lenny says Doc's going to be here soon is that they need to be careful how they show themselves in front of. I feel like they're trying to hide it or something, but I'm not really sure why.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
I don't know if
Why?
it's just
I
because
mean,
it was the '80s or like I don't exactly
right.
know.
Right.
Of course,
Or,
Aunt
or
Martha.
it's just like, okay, we need to like get out of the. We need to get onto the beach, like dry off. We need to maybe she's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like a transition. Is
Yeah,
hard.
it's not really
Yeah,
stated what the
okay.
worry
I was
is.
so convinced. Okay, all right. Yeah. I was confused, but I was so convinced, like, the way that she behaves, it's like, yeah, she's okay.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing. I was gonna say, like, as we learn, Aunt Martha is a disturbed person,
Yeah.
and so like maybe it's just that like we gotta be at mind our p's and q's like when she shows up like she's gonna be weird and I don't know like maybe that's all it
Uh-huh.
is,
Yeah.
but uh,
Well, at any rate, that's yeah, I had this whole version in my head of like, oh, okay, so she was already kind of off her rocker. It tipped her over the edge when her ex-husband left her for this other
yeah,
guy.
right. Yes, it
And
does make sense.
and maybe she did, and it's like that other guy is the ex of Lenny, and like they're like
Oh man.
cousins in this like
Oh man,
convoluted way. I
Lenny,
don't know. People have
getting
rich,
around Lenny.
multi-layered, romantic lives.
That is not impossible. I definitely can't prove that that isn't true.
But anyhow, it's probably not that important.
I think it's not that important.
So Doc is coming.
Yep.
Got to get out of the water. Maybe
Yep.
hustle. Maybe hurry. Get out of the water
Yeah.
faster.
Yeah. They don't go very fast.
No, they're just relaxing. They don't realize that these are their final moments.
And this is where like I get into like a movie that is cartoonish also being kind of subtle. This way they cut to Lenny going, John, like when this thing happens, it's like setting us up for this thing they're gonna tell us later. And like it's
Yeah.
really not obvious when
Yeah.
you see it the first time. It's only when you go back, you're like, oh, I didn't really understand that was the relationship there. Like
I didn't either. So
it's sort of a reveal later. And like sometimes it really does like give you like
Yeah.
tiny, if you pay attention to certain details, like it's like hinting at things that later on become revealed.
Yeah.
The significance of which I don't know, and I will discuss more later. That's something I have
Yeah.
to talk about. But yeah, this is the I think the other thing I wanted to mention is that it's stated, as I said, but I just want to emphasize that Ricky is spending the weekend with his father. I think that's like necessary for the way the plot goes.
Mhm.
I want to say more about that later when we get to our big reveal at the end, but anyway, I just want to note for now that Ricky's not around when this whole thing goes down. So I think that has something to do with how it could possibly even make sense. Um, okay, so are you ready to or do you want to say something about this opening bit?
No,
Okay,
go ahead.
okay.
I'm just getting, yeah.
So so we go to eight years later, and we
Well,
get
wait, real quick, can I just point out
please.
I didn't realize we were already ready to go. This like watching it unfold is so horrible. Like what she's screaming about? I don't know. Let's just keep staring at her. Anyway, I just that I mean that was yeah, that was really something.
Yeah, she is literally it's I think that actor is pretty funny. Like she's screaming at the top of her lungs, like there's people there,
Yeah.
turn around, stop the boat, what are you
Yeah. And
doing?
then she keeps screaming. She's like, somebody
Yep.
help, they're going to
Yeah,
die.
yeah.
Like I want to see the movie about how she's doing
I know.
8 years
I know. It really
later.
is like
Um,
clearly a huge trauma for her.
yeah, yeah, it's pretty awful.
It is. It is.
Um, but yeah, that I'm realizing now that clearly inspired the water skiing scene in Wet Hot American Summer. Anyway,
Oh
go
yeah.
ahead.
100%.
Your turn.
Okay, so 8 years later, we have Aunt Martha, Doc, as you'll remember.
Mhm.
Again, it's subtle. They were
Uh-huh.
going back and forth about, wait, is Doc Aunt Martha? She did say she's a doctor, but like, do they
Oh,
call her Doc? Isn't that kind of weird?
totally.
Is he her sister? I don't know, but it is Lenny saying that, and I think he's an unrelated person, so I can sort of buy it.
Yeah,
Um,
I think yeah,
it's a funny thing to slip in, but it is absolutely necessary for the plot.
yeah.
So anyway, okay, so Aunt Martha tells Ricky and Angela to hurry so as not to miss the bus. They're gonna go to,
Oh my God, her fingernails.
the camp.
Everything about this character, her mannerisms, the ribbon on her finger, her like bow on her shirt. She's amazing. She
Yeah,
is such a sort of yeah, like I said, John
yes.
Waters-esque
Yeah, that is exactly what I
character.
thought. Like yeah, it's like John Waters with like a little David Lynch. Is this like
Mhm.
really on the edge character that's like, it's like, she's like so weird. And other characters in this movie are weird, but really no one's on that level.
Yeah.
Like she is the
Yeah, there's almost
strangest
like a
character.
golden age of Hollywood vibe about her.
Yeah. Like she's living in her
Um,
own world.
yeah.
And yeah, it's oh man. Yeah, I this performance is something, and
It's campy too, in the
yeah,
sense of anyway, yeah.
it is definitely campy.
And this sort of like transgressive sense
Yeah,
of camp.
yeah. 100%. I think that is part of what's going on in the movie, and adds like a level of to the strangeness of this movie, that it is not just accidentally, but I think they really tried to make it campy.
Yeah.
Um, oh yeah, well, okay, let me just finish this scene here. Okay, so Aunt Martha packs some goodies for them. She is weird. I just wrote that. Um,
Just really distilling.
she is weird. They grab their things to go. Aunt Martha forgot something. She tied a string around her finger to remember. After a beat, she remembers. It's Ricky and Angela's physical exams. She tells them not to tell anyone where they got them, even though she is a doctor. Ricky agrees and they leave. Yeah,
Right. So
so
does Ricky know that this is not the original Angela?
see, that's the point I was trying to make with
Yeah.
Ricky was gone for the weekend. I think the answer is no. I think the answer is he didn't know.
So
That he
he doesn't
actually
know until the end of the movie.
I think he actually, well, I'm not even sure, since like he was beat up by Mel, and like
Right.
like I don't even think he saw what happened.
I think he's gonna find
He
out.
will find
Maybe
out.
he'll find out on the nightly
There's
news.
no doubt he's gonna find out. But like I
Yeah,
think
he wasn't on the lake shore.
I think he thought it was Angela for
Yeah.
real. But like I don't understand how that's possible. I mean, I understand how it's possible in the short term. But what I don't understand is how he couldn't have found out some other way, like which child actually died in the boating accident, because it just seems like that would be a known fact. I mean,
Right.
maybe Aunt
But if it's
Martha's.
he was young enough that he wasn't paying close enough
Yeah,
attention.
yeah, that is a good point. Actually, he was a lot younger when it was going down,
Mhm.
just like they were. So,
Yeah.
I guess that actually does make it more plausible that like this could be hidden from him. But yeah, I strongly suspect that he didn't actually know. I don't, but I mean, I can't
He's
prove that.
such a sweet kid.
Surprisingly so
He's an
for a foul mouth.
unrelenting, yeah, but he's an unrelenting advocate for
Oh,
her.
absolutely. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's
Because I remember.
very sweet. There's never a moment in the movie where he's like, "Can't you just try to get along?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
come
no.
on." And he's like always defending her.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. It's you don't see that much.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I think he's one of the more like I guess redemptive characters
Yeah,
in the
he
movie.
he also reminds me of the main character on the Wonder Years.
Ah,
The
yes.
original Wonder Years. I'm old.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
haven't
It's
seen
talking
the
about
reboot.
Fred Savage,
Yes.
Kevin Arnold,
Yeah,
I
Kevin Arnold.
believe.
Well done. That's a good reach, Kevin Arnold. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, no, I totally see it. I think it's also interesting to think about Ricky in the context of like his mother is Aunt Martha.
yeah.
Like,
He's
e-
very well adjusted.
even though like he wasn't subject to what Angela was, like I'm still like, yeah, but like isn't that a weird home to grow up in? Like, yeah, like
Seems like it would be.
it's hard for me to imagine like that being a normal childhood if that's your mom.
Yeah.
But yeah, another thing I wanted to say is like this this performance, it's like unforgettable, and she has two scenes
Aunt
in the
Martha,
whole
yeah.
movie. This scene and the one at the end. This is it. That's the only time you see her, and she's like fundamental to what's going on.
Yeah.
I can't say 100% exactly how much, but definitely a part of it. They played it that way.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that like she's sort of the villain of the story in a way, or at least the origin villain of the story, and yet not really a part of the main story at all.
Yeah.
The only part she has to play is sort of in the background of everything,
Yeah.
and like she doesn't come to the camp. There's no contact with, like she
Yeah.
doesn't in the present day stuff in the camp. Like there's no role there. So anyway, it's some kind of achievement, and yeah, I think this actress like went on to like sell real estate and stuff, and I'm just
Oh
like,
wow.
it's so weird. Like I'm just like I can't even imagine like because it takes. I mean, it is. I don't think it is very heightened. It's very like, but I think it takes a certain kind of bravery to do a performance like that. Like to because you you don't have to play it that. I don't even know what to call it, but like there's a strong energy there in the way she's playing every little moment that to me is just like um more than it really needed for the thing
Yeah.
to function. And so I just really appreciate that as part of this movie. That's like one of my favorite things about it. So I just have to pause and mention that because like it's a weird ass character, and it's like, it's funny how the movie isn't even about her and she's like the weirdest character in the movie.
Yeah. He
um
is.
Okay, so we will definitely come back to Aunt Martha later. I want to talk about that some more, but I think for this scene, that's good enough. So you ready?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So the buses arrive at camp. The kids stream out. Counselor Ronnie and camp owner Mel yell at the kids as they pass to no effect. The kitchen staff hangs out in the background. Not at all subtle, Artie fantasizes about the
Oh
kids, and
God.
Ben laughs it off. Oh, Artie,
Yeah.
you silly bastard.
Yeah, yeah. People
he
used to get offended about
he
things.
was like, Yeah,
Yeah,
and
people are just so sensitive today.
so Ben, who works in the kitchen here, weird bit of trivia that everyone mentions is played by Robert Earl Jones, who's James Earl Jones' father, and you can hear it if you listen to his voice. Like
Yeah.
it's not exactly the same, but it sounds very
Yeah,
similar,
the resemblance is
and the resemblance is
noticeable.
strong. Yeah, and I just to me this scene is so it's like wow, you're hitting us with this right away. I don't know. I do have a weak spot. And the Aunt Martha scene actually isn't in the same vein, but it still is a bit of a slap in the face. I enjoy a movie that's like grabs you by the collar and is like, all right, you ready for this?
Yeah.
You too bad, because like here
Yeah.
we go.
Yeah. Here we
Um
go. Here's a creepy old
yeah.
dude
The kids just arrived to camp and we're getting this like pedophile works in the kitchen. Like, what? Are you serious? Okay. So then we have Paul greets Ricky and is introduced to Angela, who isn't talking at this point. We For a while we think maybe she'll never talk, but it's not true. She actually talks just fine. It's just she just didn't want to. Anyway.
She's got some intense stare.
Oh yeah, yeah. Those front face shots.
I
Yeah,
mean, there are scenes in
totally.
this movie that really drive home just the psychological power of staring in silence at
Yeah,
a
yeah,
person
yeah.
who's trying to get a response out of you.
Yeah, 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 totally, totally. That's a huge part of the movie for sure. And yeah, for like, I don't know, I think she was like 14 or something. Like it's yeah, I'm pretty impressed with that.
Yeah.
That's another thing that's interesting about this movie. The kids, obviously there's a range, but there really are kids that actually seem like kids in this. Whereas like
Yeah.
usually it's all 20-year-olds
Yeah.
in these stories. Friday the 13th is out. Of course, in Friday the 13th, the gimmick was it was all counselors
Right.
before the kids
Before the kid
came.
showed up.
But here we really do have for real kids in
Yeah.
the cast. I don't know, it gives it a different vibe
Yeah.
than what is sort of the norm for this kind of thing, which would be more like the counselor's age.
Yeah.
Playing teens, but they're really like 20. Anyway, there's a few of those, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Okay, so yeah, Paul talks about Judy's developments, and Ricky mentions that he went out with Judy last summer, and she will probably be in the same cabin with Angela, which is true. Ricky shows Angela around the camp, finally seeing Judy. Judy is talking to some boys and blows him off. Ricky leaves Angela at her cabin. Judy comes over to Ricky, who confronts her about the older boys, but she blows him off again. He calls her a bitch and walks away.
Yep.
Okay. Judy goes into her cabin. Counselor Meg introduces other counselor Susie. So Susie is actually the other
Susie's
one
yeah.
who's actually kind of responsible,
Yeah.
along with
Yeah.
Ronnie,
And sympathetic
and
to
sympathetic.
the
Yeah, for
other.
sure.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you're right.
I just have to
Meg is just
mention
over the
that.
top
Meg
horrible.
is really
But,
awful. Really
the
awful.
labor force issues that led to the staffing of this cabin.
And tells everyone to get unpacked. Angela stares at Judy. Judy tells her to stop. Susie tries to talk to Angela. Meg thinks Angela is a quote, real winner. Angela still does not speak. Yeah, I think this like staring at Judy is interesting. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure what's going on here. Like, I think, given the ending, like I really want to read a lot of stuff into these scenes,
Uh-huh.
the fact that she's in the girls' cabin, the fact that, she's introduced to Judy as like, oh, she's got big, like
Yeah.
it's like there's some kind
Yeah,
of
like she's
fascination
drawn
there.
to her feminine,
Yeah,
her traditional feminine like flowering or whatever over the past year.
exactly. Yeah, like
Or
that's
just
some
her
kind of
overt
thing.
sexuality.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I feel like that's in there and also subtle. Like it's really not obvious when the scene's happening because obviously if you watch this the first time like you don't know where the story's going. And you're thinking like you said earlier that it's more about this thing that happened with the boat accident and she's been scarred by that
Uh-huh.
and that's sort of what's happening in the background. Maybe like she's
Right.
thinking of Judy as like the one on the motorboat or something,
Oh
like
yeah.
the like sort of is more like that, like you're that type of person,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you don't really know. Um, okay. The kids eat in the dining hall. Meg tells Ronnie that Angela hasn't eaten or spoken. So Ronnie tries to talk to Angela. Ronnie offers to take Angela to the kitchen to find something better and, quote, see Artie. Ronnie takes Angela to the kitchen. Artie is drinking beer.
Mhm.
Artie introduces himself creepily. Ronnie leaves Angela with Artie. Artie takes Angela to the walk-in. So I just have to say here, I mean, based on the way Roddy is in this movie in general, I feel like we're supposed to believe he has no idea about Artie. Like they're just like not paying attention
Yeah.
to the kitchen staff or
Yeah, yeah.
thinking about that at all. Like I think he is trying to be nice. It's just he's
Yeah, yeah, I
delivering her to the
agree.
worst possible person in
Yeah.
the kitchen. Um, Anyway, Ricky arrives at the dining hall looking for Angela. Meg tells Ricky where she is. Artie takes Angela to the walk-in and walks towards her threateningly while unbuckling his belt. Ricky storms in and Artie threatens him if he tells, but lets the two of them run away. So yeah, we get this scene, which like of course is kind of just functional because this is going to motivate our first actually not murder. He actually doesn't die, but it's implied that he's going to be like suffering a lot for a long time. You see, like
Yeah.
every nerve in his body is screaming or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So I think you could actually argue that he
Yeah.
gets it worse
He
than the
may not
people who are
recover his
killed.
vision.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. So I definitely think like it's kind of a classic trope that you make, if you make a character really horrible, it's easier to take when they're killed in some or
Yeah.
horrifically injured,
Yeah.
in some horrible
Yeah,
way.
it's pretty gross, and it goes on for a long time. You see these
Yeah,
pustules
yeah,
like
yeah,
growing
yeah.
on his face,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the
It's
screaming.
really not bad. The makeup stuff going on there
Yeah,
for a low budget thing, like
yeah,
it's
it's pretty good.
relatively impressive. Yeah, so Artie is preparing some water for corn and gets a chair to look at it because that
Yeah, that's not
pot
safe.
is
Yeah.
fucking tall. I don't know, is that normal? I've never seen a pot that tall outside of this movie,
It's very
but
tall.
maybe at a summer camp when you got to make like I don't know, like 50 ears of corn or something, like
Yeah.
that's just what you do. I don't know. Anyway, um so then we get a POV shot, a real POV shot, kids. Maybe you don't know what that means, but it means
Oh boy.
point of view. So
Yeah, yeah, sorry. I was just thinking about how impossibly heavy that pot would be. Water is very heavy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anyway.
For sure, for sure. So we get a POV shot of the killer, quote unquote, watching. Artie gets some salt and puts it in the pot. Then we get the killer POV sneaking up behind him and pushes him towards the pot. And then pulls the chair out from under him, causing the boiling water to fall on him. And we see his burn wounds as he screams. Ben comes in and is shocked. We cut to paramedics wheeling him away. That's right, he's still alive. The doctor says his burns are really bad. Mel wants to move things along and to not upset the campers. Ronnie says it was only an accident, but Mel doesn't want the parents to find out.
The shot of his blistered arms, like up in the air,
Yeah.
that's so good.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. It's a
yeah,
very
of course,
dramatic shot.
Mel's concern is not wanting to lose money.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's definitely Mel's mode for most of the movie
yeah,
until he decides that he's the one who's going to take down the killer,
God.
and he totally fails and he just beats one of the kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so Ronnie mentions the kitchen staff, like they know that this happens. So
Hmm.
Mel tries to bribe them to stay quiet, and
Seems to work
they
because we
seem to
never
agree.
really hear from them again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's this
We're
is
done with them now.
this is pretty much the end of their part of the story. It's yeah, it was really for this, I think. Um, Okay. So then in the boys' cabin, Ricky and some others try to get Mozart. Is his name really Mozart? Or do they just call him that? I don't know. It's a weird ass name. Anyway,
It's pretty
um
great. I love the idea that they just call him Mozart and they never bother to give us a backstory for
yeah, yeah.
why.
Yeah. It's funny. He's like the nerdy one, I guess, that they like pull all these pranks on.
Mhm.
Like that's sort of the
Yeah.
trope they're going with here.
Maybe it's like he listens to classical music, and that's
Yeah.
part of his being a nerd.
That would make sense. That would make sense. They try to get him to do a sit up. Ricky counts down, and then Mozart sits up into a bare ass.
Yeah. It's a
Um,
pretty elaborate scene.
it really is. It really is. There's a very a huge like lead up to it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I don't think you can do it. Like your mind to be willing, but your
Mhm.
body won't be able to. And it's just like building. It's like it's basically like a magic trick. It's like they're
Mhm.
distracting him
Yeah.
from what the point is actually going to be, and so it gets him like focused on this like weird thing that like he isn't thinking about
Mhm.
what's going to happen when I actually sit up.
Yeah.
And of course his eyes are covered, so they can set this up.
I'm amused by these pranks that seem to only exist in movies. I don't know, maybe real boys now and or
I never did this
past
for the
did these kinds of
record,
things. But the
or saw this happen, but
yeah,
you know,
like
I wouldn't say it's never happened. Obviously, someone thought of it at some point.
because somebody has to be willing to bare their ass for
Yep,
this and to
that's
have
true.
somebody's face go into their ass. So
Mhm.
it's like it's not a prank on that guy. That guy's doing it willingly.
Yeah,
But it
totally.
also seems like a pretty unpleasant
I
thing.
agree. I don't. I wouldn't really want someone's
I
face
wouldn't
like
either.
coming up in my ass, but you know, I don't know. I'm.
Well, when you put it that way.
All right. I didn't really mean it like that, but anyway. All right. So yeah, they all have a laugh about it, and they leave to play baseball.
Softball, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. It is softball. I was going to mention when I watched it carefully this time, I'm like, they are actually playing softball because they're all
Yes.
throwing underhand. It's actually a larger ball.
You can
So,
hear you can tell by the sound of it too.
no, it's totally softball. It's just in my head it was baseball, but
Yeah.
actually it's not. It's softball.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we get a long softball montage. Um, Ricky has a hit, and then Paul
There's
hits.
pretty good play happening. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. It's this scene is
For
like
a friendly game, they're like pretty good.
strangely long, and there's like a pause to mention the score, and like I guess like functionally the other team, like like some of them become murder victims later,
Yeah,
and
but not because of this.
well, I feel like there is like sort of a connection because like this gives them conflict with Ricky,
Okay.
and I feel like that kind of carries over into some of the stuff that happens later, and it kind of gets transferred, and Angela gets involved, and anyway, I feel like that's like what they're building here by doing this, setting up this rivalry.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a very small point, but that's the best I got for like why we're paying attention to this.
Fair enough.
So Ricky has a hit. Paul hits him home. Ricky insults Bill, causing him to say, "Eat shit and die, Ricky." To which Ricky retorts, "Eat shit and live, Bill," which is such a great line
Yeah, in this
that I have to
yelling
repeat it
way.
again.
Yeah.
I
Eat
know it's
shit
not.
and live.
I know it's not an important part of the plot, but when a movie comes up with a line that good, you have to acknowledge it.
Yeah, it's like that. What's the movie with the you think you're hot shit, but really you're diarrhea?
Yes.
Diarrhea.
Yes. Or what's that thing? Is that from Happy Gilmore? Like I eat pieces of
You eat
shit like
pieces of
you
shit,
for
but
breakfast.
you eat
Like
pieces of shit. For
yeah, I
breakfast.
feel like it's in that
Yeah, no,
kind of
that is
wheelhouse.
great. I love that.
Mozart plays on his calculator and almost misses the catch, but doesn't. We get a score update. It's 8-6. More of softball. The other side loses, but says they will get him back. And anyway, that's what I was referring to.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have to look up what that movie is from.
Oh, which one? The
The
pieces of shit for breakfast?
no, that is Happy
Oh,
Gilmore.
oh, that
Uh,
is Happy Gilmore. Okay.
the
The
you think
the
you're hot shit earlier? Just called
yeah.
Dollhouse.
Oh, that's Dollhouse.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Wow, I didn't know that was Dollhouse. That was something else. Interesting.
Well, according to IMDb.
I believe it. I believe it.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Okay. So then in the rec room slash dance hall, uh I struggle with what to call some of these places, but I think they call it a rec room later, so I'm going with that. Um, some boys are trying to get some skinny dipping happening. Um, one of them,
This is another thing that I feel like only happens in movies.
yeah, totally, it's totally a movie thing, but but the way it plays out here is not the way it usually goes.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, it's funny because it just is so unsuccessful.
it really is. So one of them suggests talking to Angela, but another says she is fucked up. Another asks if they are afraid, so finally two of them agree. One asks Angela if she wants to join. She stonewalls. Another asks her to go for a walk. She stonewalls. This is where we get some of those looks.
Oh my God,
Um,
it's so good. The best ones, well, the best one is later.
oh, I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about. I know what you're talking about, but it's sort of the beginning of that.
yeah,
They turn on
it's so
her.
intense.
Mel walks in and goes over to Meg. Ricky and Paul arrive. The boys bully Angela. Ricky jumps in, as you mentioned, and a fight starts. Angela stares. Mel and Meg watch passively. Ricky threatens the others as they are pulled apart. Um,
This is just an incredible brawl
it
as
really
all of the
is.
adults
They
except
pile
Ron,
in
they
there.
just stand around.
Yeah,
Mel is just standing
he just
there.
stands there. Yeah,
No intervention.
it's like, whatever. Um, let's see. Paul introduces himself to Angela. He tells her he knows about what happened to her family. He says that last year they hung the girls' panties on the flagpole, then says, sorry, we got caught anyway. Paul has to go back to his cabin and says goodnight, prompting Angela to speak for the first time. In this time, obviously, she spoke in the flashback.
Yeah.
But anyway, or was it Peter? Anyway, they both spoke. All right. And says goodnight back. And Judy notices. Yeah, I just have to mention this scene because I watched some behind the scenes. Uh so Felissa Rose, who plays Angela here, is like a mainstay on the horror convention circuit, and I've seen her talk about the movie a bunch, and she's on the commentaries, two of the three commentaries here as well. And she told this story about this scene that it was really hard to get through because she kept laughing when they would go, "Yo, Angela, why you so fucked up?"
Yeah. Yeah. You Angela. Yeah, it's a little bit, and then with it being Angela, it makes it very who's the boss.
It does. It really does.
Angela.
That name is perfect for that accent. There's something about it.
Yeah.
It's just so Jersey. So here we get the introduction of, well, not the introduction, but sort of the start of the Paul and Angela relationship, and he gets her to speak for the first time, and this is where it's like she's not speaking because she's like so fucked up or whatever. Like she's actually just not inclined to speak to these people. Like they're just being like
Yeah.
mean and weird, and like so she doesn't think they're worth talking. Like it's like when someone is nice to her, she does talk
Yeah.
and like normally, and it's like no big deal. Like bye. Like she's talking for the rest of the movie pretty much normally. So like even though you still get stares, like it's not really that big, where she's just gonna be like silent for the whole
Right.
movie and turn out to be the killer.
Right. Which it's pretty fascinating when you think about the extent to which girls are socialized to respond to not just to respond in ways that set other people at ease, but also like engage in mindless chit chat in order to like ease social interactions. So to see her just stare and refuse to provide even the most minimal response that the other person, I mean, it's a wild power move to watch.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, I also want to mention this thing Paul says about like last year we hung the girls' panties on the flagpole. Like it's to me it's interesting the second time when you know what's going on with Angela, because there's like an extra level there And I feel like there is this subtext in the movie of like, she has been forced more or less to live as a girl, and now she's experiencing these things
Uh-huh.
from that point of view, and like it has some effect. The movie isn't 100% clear on what that effect is, but I do think it shows that. And I feel like this is sort of part
Yeah.
of that, because then Paul's like, oh, sorry, yeah, we got caught.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, like the right. And of course, she was so young when the accident happened and she went to live with the doctor or
Yeah,
the aunt
yeah,
that she didn't it's not like she had much of a uh personal prior experience of being socialized as a boy. I mean, only
right,
a few years, but
yeah,
those early years are different. But
yeah.
these conversations and dynamics that come up at camp that are very much gendered
Oh,
in
yeah,
in
yeah,
this binary way.
yeah.
And so and the thing early on that you're pointing out of her staring at what's her name?
Judy,
Judy.
yeah, yeah,
And now this of like, oh yeah, this is a thing that the boys did to the girls last time.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I have to mention in case I forget, that Judy has a shirt with her name on it, which I think
Yeah,
is
that's pretty
hilarious.
funny.
I
Yeah,
feel like I might forget to
I was
mention that,
amused with
so I
that.
just wanted to throw that in because I just think that's
Yeah.
it's another
There's
level of
there's
ridiculous.
this like background character wearing a shirt that says hiking shirt.
Hiking shirt.
I think it's really
That's
great.
funny.
I love all the crop tops, the
Oh,
short
crop
shorts,
top. That's what that's
Ronnie's
called.
absolutely amazing pecs that are
Oh
so
man.
over the top.
Oh, did you see? I noticed. I noticed for the first time or the second time actually this time that there's one scene where you see him in the background like pumping iron.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like
Well,
this, like
yeah.
doing side raises
I mean,
with
he's
like
gotta be.
giant dumbbells.
He's gotta be. I mean, to maintain a
Yeah,
physique like that, the guy, it probably has in
yeah.
his rider that every 15 minutes he has to do
And
something.
his shorts are 3 inches long. Like he's always
Did you
wearing
look that
those.
up, or
No,
is
no,
that
no,
an
no.
estimate?
I'm just guessing.
Yeah.
They're like
They're
seriously the
very
minimal
short.
band
Yeah.
they could possibly
They're
be.
barely more than Speedos.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
It's hilarious.
It's like you could go swimming in them, and yeah, it's the
Yeah,
style.
it's hilarious.
The style is truly special in this
Yeah, but
movie.
I like the idea of, everybody just walking around in shirts to have their own names on them. I mean, how much easier would life be if everybody was wearing their own name on their shirts?
I agree.
It's like a bigger name tag.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And it's like permanently there. It's not gonna fall off or someone hides it or whatever. It's
Yeah,
like
we should really require people to tattoo their names on their foreheads.
yeah, that's even better.
Oh my God, that would solve so many problems.
All right. So you
Yeah,
ready?
the volleyball play is real bad. It's very
Oh,
not because I think she's wearing that t-shirt when she's playing
yes,
volleyball.
you're right. Yes,
And
yes.
so just that's the connection there because I made the comment about the softball play being pretty impressive.
Hmm.
The volleyball is
Not
nits,
impressive.
nits.
It didn't. Yeah, it didn't
Now I am not
really.
good at either of those sports, but I did play them, and
Mhm.
so I feel like I can say that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It didn't seem really like their hearts were in it with the volleyball.
No,
Um,
maybe that's why that sequence isn't as long.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Like they just look like they suck.
Yeah, something like that. All right.
All right,
Are you
yeah, what's
okay.
next?
So, the skinny dipping boys try to talk the girls into joining, but they suggest going without them. So they do. The
Which is
girls,
also surprising.
yeah, it is. It is. They're like, okay,
All right,
well.
fine, yeah.
And so we see a bunch of butts go by.
Hmm.
The girls look on. There's a couple of actually the boys who were talking to Angela like bullying her. They're like smoking pot
Angela.
off to the
Yeah,
yo Angela, why are you so fucked up?
yeah, getting very clearly high.
Yeah, I think that's implicated. They don't really say that, but I
Yeah, they
see
don't have to say
from the
it.
context it
No,
was pretty
no
clear.
one has ever seemed as high as that.
No, that I mean that's a good example. It's like there's times where I think it is supposed to be obvious, and it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll come back to that. Okay. So one of them asks the girls for a midnight canoe ride. None accepts, but one suggests Leslie could go, who's not there. And I guess off screen she agrees
Yeah, there's this like
because
knowing thing of like Leslie, and it's
yeah,
like okay,
Leslie will go.
Leslie will go on a canoe ride with anybody if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. Anyway, so then we cut to one of them taking Leslie in a canoe. And then he starts rocking a boat and teasing her about snakes and stuff and such. And he tips the boat over so she swims away and says, "You bastard, I hate you." He
Mm.
goes into the tipped over canoe. I was confused by this, honestly. He actually like calls out for Leslie, and I'm like, you saw her swim away. I'm
Yeah,
like,
is it
what
that he
the fuck
thinks
are
that
you
she'll hear and
doing?
it'll sound creepy or something? It's an odd scene.
Yeah, maybe that's the idea.
And then he just starts singing to himself, which is funny. It's like when you sing in the shower because the shower
Oh, is that the idea?
resonates. I
Because
think
the
so.
echo
The
of
echo
it?
like
That's
makes
why
it
he starts
sound
doing the
good.
hey Baba
Yeah.
Reba.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, okay. Because that's always struck me as like such a weird like, what are you
Yeah.
doing? Anyway, so you go right, Leslie gets out, the boys get out, the skinny dipping ones. And then the killer appears to Kenny, who's the one in the canoe, and pulls him underwater. Um, so-called Mike tries to find Kenny but gives up. That's the other one
So
from
called.
earlier. I put him in quotes. I don't know why I put him in quotes. That's why I
Okay.
said so
Okay.
called. I guess I think maybe I looked up the names or something, and I just wanted to
And it just felt
emphasize that I
fraudulent.
didn't know their names, and maybe it also like it doesn't really matter, but anyway, um, yeah, and this is I think actually yeah in the I forgot to mention in the scene with Artie, he says, "Hey kid, help me up. I'll get you an ice cream sundae."
Yeah.
And you know that's literally what not exactly but I shouldn't say literally that's close to what Ronnie was suggesting when he brings Angela to him. He's like, hey, why don't you get her some ice cream or something,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
and so it's like it's making that connection, you know, if you're what of course it doesn't have to mean that, but like
Right.
once you know what the answer is later, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, that's what's going on. And we also get that in this scene, right? This is one of the kids who was bullying Angela earlier, and it's like, hey, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
You know?
There's a lot of that, like, hey, it's
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. That's a classic thing. And they did the
Yeah.
same thing in Friday the 13th, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like, hey, what are you doing here? You know,
Right. Right.
it's like that's, you know, that's kind of if you want to make it a mystery of like who is the killer,
Yeah.
that's kind of a small thing you could do to kind of
Yeah.
build up the clues because it's like, well, okay, they
They know
recognize the killer,
them.
so that
Yeah.
means the killer should be someone they know from the
Yes.
camp, you know.
Yes.
You can at least go that far. Um, and oh, that's the other thing I was gonna say. You know, Mel comes to believe that Ricky is the killer, and I think the movie allows you to believe that up to a point, and so I think anyway because they fought with Ricky specifically
Yeah.
earlier,
Yeah.
like that is a possible way that you could
Yeah. Yeah.
interpret
Yeah,
this bit
so
here.
rather remarkably, I remembered I remembered the basic
You
answer.
remember the ending?
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
the ending, which is yeah, I have a terrible recall for movies. I've seen this movie once before we watched it today. And oddly enough, I did remember, but I was watching to see, how plausible is it that it could be anybody else. I don't remember what theories I had the first time that I watched it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it really seems like those two are the only plausible kill like
Yeah.
suspects
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
early on before you know.
Right. Yeah, and as a very small bit of trivia, I think they actually did use the actor who plays Ricky as the killer in some of the scenes,
Oh,
and
to throw you
to
off
throw you off. And
and to support that like duality.
exactly. And probably the most unfortunate one is when he appears in Judy's door. Like if you look, I say Judy's door, I mean it's just the cabin. But anyway, she's the only one in there. And on the high quality
Yeah,
Blu-ray,
yeah.
you can see that is him,
In a
even
wig.
though like yeah, in a wig,
Yeah.
even though they're trying to hide it, you know. And I think in the cinema in the 80s that was
Yeah.
blurrier and you weren't supposed to be able to see it that well. Like I don't think they expected to
Yeah.
get restored to Blu-ray quality where it would be that visible what's happening. I have another example of that later, but
Yeah, yeah. Watching it on Blu-ray, there were a couple of things that I was like, I bet that this worked better.
yeah,
And that was one of them where it's like, that looks like that kid in a wig.
yeah,
But it gives it a
it
creepiness.
does. That's true. Yeah, yeah.
It's just like, what is happening here?
Yeah, yeah, it's weird. It's weird. It definitely, yeah, it allows you to come up with maybe some alternative theories other than the one that's actually true. And yeah, I'll say more about that later, actually. That's a good point. Okay. So are you ready to continue there? Okay, so then we have some kind of camp worker, like a lifeguard. I'm not really sure what this guy is. He's a very amusing character who complains loudly about cleaning up after the kids,
Oh
calling them
yeah, yeah.
peckerheads. That's his signature way of referring to them.
Hmm.
And he finally finds Kenny's body, you know, the one in the canoe. A snake comes out. There were snakes there. You
There
pointed
were
that out.
snakes, yeah.
It's a small point, but I never
I'm
thought
gonna
about
say I don't think a turtle is gonna eat you, or
it. Well, it
unless
might
you're a
nibble on you.
raspberry. If you're a raspberry, the turtle will eat you.
It might nibble on your nose.
They might.
Kind of looks like a raspberry.
Yeah, that's true.
Underwater, you know, in the
That's
dark, all raspberries look the same.
oh, it
Anyway,
is highly embarrassing.
okay. Right. The paramedics take Kenny out as Frank the cop tells Mel he thinks that he drowned. Mel tries to blow it off. Ronnie's not so sure. Ronnie tells Frank, the cop, that Kenny was a good swimmer. Frank says, I hope you're wrong, and leaves. Um, then we have the girls playing volleyball as Angela watches. Paul comes over and asks her to go to the movie at the rec hall. Judy watches in her Judy shirt. I did write the Judy shirt down.
Oh my goodness.
Um, I was worried I didn't, and I
Mhm.
can't
Yeah, can't
can't
miss
not
that.
mention it. Meg shoos Paul away and then yells at Angela. Then Susie steps in and tries to get Angela to play, but she doesn't want to. Um, so yeah, this was the maybe mediocre volleyball play happening, shall we say. It definitely didn't seem like any of them were particularly invested in it.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So Paul and Angela leave the movie holding hands. Ricky reminds Judy of old times, but she refuses his advances. Paul takes Angela behind a cabin and goes for a kiss. Angela tries to leave, but Paul asks for another one. And then Angela goes in her cabin. Judy approaches Paul as he leaves. Um, let's see. Yeah, so that's the end of that.
Yeah, it's like the worst kisses.
Yeah, yeah, super awkward. Super awkward.
Yeah.
But I feel like for like this age kids, it's actually not
Yeah, it makes sense. It's
necessarily
just like,
inaccurate.
you kiss somebody and they have absolutely no
No
reaction.
response at all. Yeah, yeah, totally. Totally. It's definitely awkward. And I'm gonna talk about that more later. Because there's something going on there that they put a finer point on later, even though I still don't know what that point is. Anyway, I definitely want to talk about that, but it's not here that we really get into it. So I'll hold it off. Um, okay. So Paul arrives at the boys' cabin as they do the shaving cream gag on Mozart, wake him up with a smelly sock. Mozart pulls a knife and chases Ricky around, which sounds ridiculous, and it is. The counselor, Gino, comes in and grabs the knife. Ricky tries to talk him down, and then they pile on Loverboy Paul as the scene ends. It's very, very silly scene. This
Yeah,
whole scene is
it's
like, you could cut that whole scene and nothing changes in the movie.
yeah.
So that is an example of what you're talking about. It's just silliness. Um, Okay. So later, Paul comes up behind Angela, makes her guess who. Judy tries to butt in, but Paul shoots her away. Finally, Meg approaches, and then Paul leaves. There's a lot of coming and going here. Meg demands that Angela go in the water. Finally, yelling, getting no answer, she starts shaking Angela.
Yeah, this is probably my favorite Angela stare of the whole movie.
Yeah, yeah,
He's like,
yeah.
Meg is getting so
Unnerved
angry.
by
Yeah,
the lack of response that like yeah she loses it.
yeah,
She's
she loses
like
it.
lashing out here. Ronnie steps in and stops her.
Yeah,
um but yeah, no, that's yeah. It's like, I mean, well, she's gonna do another thing later, but anyway. Yeah, Meg's
yeah,
awful. Real
it's
peckerhead,
awful.
as that
Real,
guy says
yeah.
later. um okay. So later, Judy comes out of the bathroom and mentions Angela getting Meg in trouble. Judy asks Angela why she doesn't take showers with the rest of them. Judy bullies her about it. Susie steps in, finally slapping Judy when she won't stop. And
Which is great.
Angela's like, fuck off, slap. It's like,
Yeah,
wow, that's how you talk to your counselor? Like,
fuck
Jesus
off gets you a slap.
Christ.
Yeah,
Fuck off.
it's
Wow.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so I feel like this for me is the first time where they are really planting a hint.
Yes,
I
yes.
think, the medical exam is sort of that too, but
Yeah, it's subtle
the
though.
medical exam is for both of them.
Yeah,
And so I feel like that it's not totally obvious that that's specifically about Angela, but here it is. And
yeah,
it's very easy to read this. And actually it's not entirely clear, this isn't part of the truth, that she's like put off, she's getting bullied a lot.
yeah.
She's
There's
put
all
off.
kinds of reasons why she wouldn't
Yeah.
want
And
showers.
that's something I would do. So
Yeah,
like I don't think it necessarily means she's like hiding something on her body or whatever, but like um or out of anything other than like not wanting to show
right,
it in front of them.
right.
But I do think they put this in here
Yeah,
deliberately to push us towards what we're getting later. Okay, so then we cut to water balloon fight on a
oh
roof,
my goodness.
which is like fucking ridiculous.
Again, insurance is
Yeah,
not,
yeah,
no, you're done. You're done.
yeah. Yeah, it's like
Letting
Mel,
kids take a,
if you don't want the camp to close down,
yeah,
I mean, even
yeah,
if there
maybe don't
wasn't a
get,
killer, like,
yeah.
you gotta look into that kitchen
No water
staff,
balloon
and you
fights
need
on
to stop the
roofs.
water balloon
No,
fights on the
yeah.
roof.
No precariously high pots of boiling
Yep,
water.
yep, yep. Uh,
30-gallon boiling water.
so this is the losing baseball team, incidentally, if you look. So anyway, that's the part of the point I was
I
trying to make
see.
earlier.
I
It's like
see.
it kind of comes into play here. So they throw water balloons at Angela from the roof. Ricky comes over and curses them out, threatening to kill them.
I love that. I love that. Threatening to-
He does say that. And of course, that has a function as well, because
Yes.
Mel comes over and stops Ricky, ending the tension.
Mhm.
Mel punishes all of them. Um, Paul sits with Angela as Ricky asks if she's okay, and the losers give her the finger. Um, I call them losers. I really just mean literally, but they're also the other kind of loser, I think.
Yes.
Anyway, okay. So yeah, this is setting the stage for further murders later.
Mhm.
Water balloons. Okay. So oh yeah, further murders, such as what we're about to get now. So one of the losers has to take a quote wicked dump, which is something
It's yeah.
you
Yeah,
never hear
yeah.
in a
It's the
movie.
only time that line has been in a
No
movie.
one ever
Yeah, yeah,
says
yeah. I'll
that.
join up to you, but I gotta take a wicked dump first.
Wicked dump. Like what? Okay. So he goes to take a wicked dump and shuts himself in a stall and sits down as one does. We see a broom handle or something like that, holding the stall door closed, locking him in basically. And then we see, I guess this is actually a wasp nest, although what I wrote was beehive, because they're bees later. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is it's a stinging insect with some kind of nest, um, being put through the now broken screen. So it's been sort of slashed. We see it slash with a knife. Um, the guy can't get out, so the bees or possibly wasps sting him to death, and we see the aftermath. So like this murder, I think is actually the silliest one. Like
Yeah.
I've never seen a murder like this in a slasher movie, where
Hmm.
it's like multiple steps, like
Yeah.
locking him in the stall door, slashing the screen,
Yeah.
putting the nest in, and then
Yeah.
letting
Yeah.
the insects actually do it. Like the killer didn't actually do any violence. Like
Hmm.
it's weird. Like I feel like this is not like so, and it's just it's like it almost seems like a Looney Tunes thing or
Yeah,
something,
yeah,
you
it's over the
know?
top because it's clearly intentional. Like there's no way that this could be perceived as an accident.
Yeah,
The
definitely.
way that, oh well maybe he just drowned. Well, I don't know. He was a good
Right.
swimmer and it's like, well, but he could have drowned.
Yeah.
And like, another way that you could have, I don't know. Like you could imagine another version where the point of using a wasp nest was to make it ambiguous as to whether it was murder. But there's no
Yeah.
way to interpret this as not having been
Yeah.
murder or
Yeah.
intentional.
Yeah. With the thing,
Yeah,
I
the
mean, he
screen
breaks
being
it, but they can
slashed,
still see that the
the
stall door was blast.
yeah.
They can see that the screen was slashed. Yeah.
And a branch with a wasp nest just
Yeah.
didn't find its way
And a
in.
branch of the line, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
She
Yeah.
didn't take the branch back out.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so actually the next scene makes it clear that they do understand that this is intentional.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just to underscore your point that it's kind of an absurd way to murder someone.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It really is. It really is. It's like as far as this movie goes, it's like the strangest and yeah, like silliest. And it just seems like something that would be like in Tom and Jerry or something,
Mhm.
or Itchy and Scratchy, Like that's what I
Yeah.
expect them to do. It's just like I don't know. It's unusual in that way, but it does fit this movie for
Yeah.
sure. Okay. So Mel says he's finished. Ronnie says there are 25 campers left. Mel reveals that he thinks he knows who the killer is. So he thinks there's a killer,
Mhm.
but he doesn't tell us yet. We'll find out later. It's Ricky.
Huh.
Anyway, sorry to spoil it, but that's what happens. Okay. So Angela sneaks behind one of the cabins as we get a so-called killer POV shot, but it's not actually because this is Angela, so it's not the killer, but they want us to think it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're trying to throw us off, obviously. This scene in general is trying to throw us off. Which is revealed to be Paul. Paul asks Angela to go to the lake. Oh yeah, I didn't write it here, but she's like, I thought you were the killer. And it's
Yeah,
like, oh, did you?
that's definitely misdirection.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, okay. Anyway, she goes, they kiss, and she pushes him over and runs away. They run back and forth on the beach. Paul tackles Angela and they kiss. He tries to put his hand in her shirt, but she refuses. Nevertheless, he persists. At this point, we get a flashback. This is where I want to get into it.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what happens in the flashback. So we have young Peter and Angela giggling as we see John and Lenny in bed together. Then we cut to a revolving bed with Peter pointing at Angela, and as we dissolve, his finger gets closer to Angela. And then in the present, Angela runs away. So, like, this scene fascinates me probably more than anything else in the movie because I feel like it's implying something that, like, maybe back in 1983, it was obvious what the point of this is. I don't really know for sure what the point of this is. I can tell you like a couple of thoughts I have about it. So like I feel like okay, so based on the ending, we know that Angela was originally Peter and Aunt Martha forced him to become a girl and be named Angela and so on, right? And that's like some part in the ending. We can talk about that more later. But, she started out life as Peter, a boy. And to me it's it's hard for me to think it's not relevant that in this scene, she's getting this sort of sexual advance from a boy, and then we get a flashback where it's like she's thinking about this time that she saw she whatever saw her father and another man together, and then it's like triggering that somehow in the stew of
Yeah.
whatever's going on in her mind.
Yeah, this is like a boy to boy sexual advance.
Yeah,
Like, well, yeah.
it sort
So, I
of.
mean, she's been
There's confusion
socialized,
there,
but
but
there's like socialized against her will,
yeah,
presumably, or like socialized as a girl at the initiation of this mentally unstable adult,
yeah.
not her own, like, I do not feel,
Affirmative, like this is
yeah,
what I want to be.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
And I interpreted the scene in the bed with the siblings as being like expressionistic, that it wasn't recounting a specific event between the siblings,
Okay.
but this it's kind of a hint of this subconscious of like Peter becoming Angela.
That's the what getting closer to Angela
Yeah,
is sort of hinting at. I think that's
that's
the
my interpretation of it.
I think that's the best reading that
It
I've
is
heard.
unsettling.
But it's like, yeah, it's in this black void, like
Yeah,
Charlie Rose void, and
yeah,
it's spinning around. It's a very stylistic scene. To me, like that this is part of the movie where I'm
yeah,
like, a lot of this is like silly, low budget stuff. And then like this scene is like weirdly effective. I'm like, this is
yeah,
I don't know. It's to me like this is the most interesting scene in the movie. Like it really gets me because I'm not 100% sure what point they're trying to make, and like I suspect that there's something like perhaps homophobic being suggested here, but I don't really know what. And it really is portraying the two men together like quite tenderly, and like it doesn't like the kids are giggling, but it's like are they giggling because they're two men, or are they just giggling
I think they're
because
just
kids
giggling. I
giggle at
mean,
adults in that kind of situation in
yeah,
general,
yeah.
like which is true.
I think kids at that age developmentally would be giggling at any adults in bed.
That's what I would think
And,
too.
certainly from an early age, many kids, and at that time more kids, would have gotten this message of like boys marry girls,
Yeah, right,
so
right.
possibly, but like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think it's an innocent sort of giggling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It doesn't seem malicious to me. And they're hanging out on the boat. John's there, Lenny's there.
Yeah,
It doesn't really seem like there's any kind of weirdness there.
yeah,
It seems more like what you're saying, like, if kids like walk in on their parents and it's awkward and maybe like they are like uncomfortable and laugh at it or whatever, like
yeah,
I think that makes sense, but it's just the placement is interesting because it's like, what exactly is the connection here? And the
yeah,
movie doesn't tell you, and that's part of what I like about it. Like it really lets you fill in the gap here how you want. And especially the first time you see it, you really don't know why they're showing you this. It's like, what? Like it's sort of like, why is that relevant?
yeah,
And like I feel like in a way it doesn't matter, but does it? Like is the movie suggesting this is relevant? Like I'm not sure. And so like anyway, that's
yeah. I mean, it's it's an interesting question given this sort of the way that Angela um reacts to what's his name? Um and his like advances,
Yeah,
Paul,
yeah,
his like
yeah,
adolescent overtures
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
you know her trying to make sense of them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's like I think she likes Paul and like she's not like totally put off by him, but like she is also like uncomfortable
Yeah,
clearly to a
I mean,
degree.
she seems early on, like in that first scene where they talk, and then in I think one of the other ones, she seems to be responding to him like a crush
Yeah.
would.
He's the first one that gets her to
Um,
talk
yeah, yeah,
on
but I mean,
screen. I mean,
but that
presumably
could
she talks
be,
to Ricky off screen,
yeah,
but like in
but
terms of
just
the camp, you know.
yeah, yeah, but just to say, I mean, there's friendship and then there's crush,
Yeah.
and I think especially with teenagers or adolescents that line can be blurry.
Mm-hmm.
But I then when the rubber hits the road, it's like he's trying to feel her up
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
wait a minute, what's gonna happen next?
Yeah.
And
And it but there's another level that could be there, which is that it's also just along the lines of the shower thing. That she's nervous if he gets
yeah,
his hand in there, he's gonna
he's gonna
figure it
find
out.
out exactly.
And so
Yeah.
it's like I got to stop that, but then this flashback isn't directly relevant to that, so it's sort of like I don't know, and it's hard for me to think it isn't in the stew
Yeah.
of a movie that its ending depends on this gender reveal that that she was raised by a gay father, you know
Yeah.
like are they saying something about that? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. It's a yeah, it's an interesting question,
It's like
what sense we are to make of that.
yeah, like it's like I almost suspect they're implying something, but it's like because they don't say it, I'm not sure. Or is that just me? I don't know. Like it's
Yeah, yeah. Does the movie function in exactly the same way if there's no relationship between Lenny and
yeah.
what's his name,
Yeah, exactly.
But
Or is it just part of the stew of gender
artist too.
confusion
Yeah.
that is going on
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Angela's world? And it's like not necessarily like a problem, but like it's a thing that's like
Yeah, I
floating
mean
in
it
her head.
seems definitely connected to this weirdness with the mom as well. Of like this is why I was so convinced, like, yep, her husband left
Yeah.
her because she's gay,
It
because
does
he's
make
gay.
sense. It does make sense. It's just I feel like from the
But yeah, no.
lines, it's not that.
Yeah.
So
Anyway.
at least I can settle that because there's just a lot about this that
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a very interesting
I've seen
sequence.
it. I've seen it many times, and yeah, it's like it's interesting stylistically, but it's also interesting just conceptually, like what the point they're making here is. And I've heard many theories about it, and I've never heard one that was like entirely satisfactory to me. And the writer director like has never commented on it directly. And so it's like I just don't know for sure. Like I don't know, and I think that's part of what draws me in. That hint of something that allows you to think about it and like try to make sense of it. But it really, for a movie that, like I said, is like at times very cartoonish and very over the top, like it's strangely subtle what it's doing here. For a cheap slasher movie. Like I'm just like this I don't know.
Mhm.
And like even just seeing this, I mean, I do feel like for the 80s, like this is again, I don't know what their intentions were, but the way they portray this, it's like it seems like ahead of its time in a way. Like, cause I'm thinking about like cruising. Cruising was like 3 years before this, and like that was a huge
Yeah.
thing as far as like portraying gay men in cinema, and it's like, but in the context, in that case, it's like it's like a gay giallo or something. There's a killer, and it was protested and stuff. It's an interesting movie in its own way, but it's not. I feel like it's definitely more negative than this is. But this isn't that far from it, and like most slasher movies don't go there, from this era.
Yeah.
So it just stands out for that reason, because it's like you watch a scene and it's like, oh, they're just like being tender and like, like there's no, I don't know. It didn't really seem like it has to be interpreted as saying anything negative, but I have suspicions because of the time period and because of the ending and all that stuff that like there's some implication here that I'm missing. I don't know. Anyway, that's all I want to say about that. Okay. So since many have left the camp, they're gonna play capture the flag. That's all they got now. So Gino explains, we see them play. Paul asks Angela why she was upset. Angela says she wasn't ready. He tries to put his arm around her, but she pushes him off. Judy comes over and tries to butt in, as usual. This starts a long
Yeah.
sequence where Judy keeps butting in like repeatedly. Anyway,
Get a life, Judy.
this is Judy's life. Anyway, Ricky comes over and asks Angela to get the flag by cutting through the woods. This great plan that's really going to matter a lot.
Yeah, they really lay this out.
Yeah. She tries to refuse, but finally agrees. She follows him into the woods. Ricky tells her the plan. Ricky comes upon Paul and Judy kissing, and we see Angela see as well. Paul runs after Angela as Judy laughs. Ricky calls her a scumbag. She says, "Fuck you, Ricky."
Mm-hmm.
Um, scumbag.
Scumbag. That's the way kids talk nowadays.
So yeah, I feel like this whole thing is just business to set up this part. So it's
Yeah.
like that's why they don't follow up on it. But I agree, like they get you invested in
I know.
it,
I wanted to know
and
if
then
their
like
plan was gonna
there's
work.
no follow up. Yeah, like we never even hear about the
Yeah.
capture the flag again.
We
Like
never
that was the end of
know.
that.
After they spent all that time telling us the rules of capture the flag
Yeah.
and how it works.
Yeah, I know. It's yeah.
Anyhow.
Yeah, there's a touch of sloppiness in this masterpiece. Anyway, okay. So Paul comes out of the water and tries to, this is later, obviously, and tries to apologize to Angela about Judy. Angela isn't talking. Judy comes over again. Paul leaves. Judy wants to get Angela into the water. Ricky comes out, but is stopped by Mel. Judy still wants Angela to swim. Meg comes over to help with the bullying. Meg actually picks up Angela and carries her to the water to throw her in. Ricky tries to jump in, but Mel stops him, revealing that he thinks Ricky is the killer. Meg throws Angela in the water as Ronnie stops Mel, allowing Ricky to help Angela out of the water, along with the worker lifeguard guy from earlier who calls Meg a peckerhead.
That's his line, you're right. Pecker.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I feel like that's why they gave him that line. So it's like obviously the same guy.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I would have recognized him, but when he says peckerhead, it's like, oh, it's definitely.
So in 2024, Mel's going to prison for this.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, come on.
Never mind what's coming.
Yeah,
But just
yeah.
this, right?
Yeah, this alone.
It's so bad.
really bad.
It's so bad.
It's really bad. Some kids throw sand at Angela as this is
These kids
sealing
are
their
so- yeah,
fates.
it is. It's so yeah. These kids are psychos. Like
As she
throwing.
leaves with
sand.
Ricky. Yeah, I know. It's like unnecessarily mean. Like they
Yeah.
saw what happened. They're like right there.
Kids
And
are
like
so
it's like you're gonna
mean.
throw sand? Like really?
Kids
Anyway.
are so mean.
And Ricky says we'll get them back for this.
And indeed, they're gotten back.
They are definitely gotten back. Yeah, so this is another thing that you know that I do feel like is supposed to be in the stew. I think the reveal is that it's not the main thing, but it's hard to believe that, this tragedy that opens the movie is entirely irrelevant.
Right.
And I definitely feel like when they throw into water, it's like supposed to be triggering that, like a memory of that thing. So it's like
Yeah.
that's, roughly the area where that happened,
Yeah.
Obviously
Yeah.
it's not the exact area, but still like it's like in very much in the same, and like just being in the water, like I mean there's other levels to it, but anyway, that's how it seems to me, like they're kind of selling it, and like I said, I'm not convinced that that's not a part of the issue here, but
Yeah.
anyway, uh
Yeah, I mean, there's practical reasons why she might not want to be thrown in the water,
yeah,
but yeah, I agree that it should be traumatic.
yeah,
I mean, it
yeah,
just comes back to the essential thing that it's a terrible idea to send them to this camp.
yeah, definitely,
There are
definitely,
other camps.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah, like Aunt Martha knows that,
Uh-huh.
like she knows what happened
Yeah.
clearly. So it's like, why are you sent anyway? Aunt Martha's weird though, so who
Yeah.
knows? But yeah, and I just have to say, Meg is a counselor,
Yeah.
and she
She
fucking picks up Angela, throws her to like, what are you doing?
yeah,
Really?
she's a psycho
Like,
as
what's
well.
wrong with you? Are a peckerhead? Like, what is up with you? Like,
Yeah.
seriously? Like, how do you think this is a like? I don't know.
Yeah.
It'd be one thing if Judy did it, because at least she's not a counselor.
Right.
She's obviously a bully, but like, Meg, like, come on, you're supposed to, and she's already been in trouble at this point, so it's just like, what the
Yeah. Yeah, there's clearly no HR department at Camp Arawak.
fuck? Yeah. Yeah, that's laughable actually. That's why I laughed at it. Anyway, okay. So, we're getting to endgame territory here.
Oh no.
Cause yeah, when this scene happens, I'm like, oh shit, this is where the ending is sort of starting to build. Cause yeah, basically the last night is about to happen now. So, here's how it starts. And it all begins with Ronnie. Ronnie tells the
Oh,
counselors
Ronnie.
that there's a social in the rec room, um, except for one of them who has to take the little campers out for some real camping.
The
Um,
sand throwers.
the sand throwers, exactly. It seems like that's Eddie's job because he's there in that scene too. Like he's supposed to keep an eye on the little
He's the counselor for
kids.
the little
Yeah,
kids.
exactly. Um, it's a small point, but it does sort of come into play. Meg has a night off, so she propositions Mel for a date.
I'm just this is so stymieing to me.
Um, um,
It's so it like what happened to you?
yeah, it's like
Who hurt you, Mel?
it's it's like yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's like Meg's like bad enough already. It's
Not
like
Mel, Meg,
yeah,
sorry.
it's Meg and Mel.
Megan Mel.
Yeah.
It was fate.
It does seem like it was fate. And like the weird thing is like she's like into it. She's like, yeah, I got a date tonight.
Yeah, yeah,
Woo!
yeah,
And
yeah.
Judy's like,
That's the
who's
thing.
it
She was
with? And
like,
she's like, it's a secret.
yeah.
And it's like, Mel? I mean, no offense. I'm sure, actually he's awful, but
He's
he's
awful.
awful as a person, let alone what he
Yeah.
looks like, and the fact that he's obviously like 60 something. But
Yeah.
it's like, what the fuck? Like, it's like totally bizarre. And there's no motivation offered. It's not like they even
Right.
go like, hey Mel, can you give
Yeah.
me a promotion? Or like,
No,
hey
he's not even
Mel,
a silver
can you
fox.
like get my punishment off
Yeah.
can you like get Ronnie off my back? Or hey,
Yeah, yeah.
anything,
Yeah.
anything. And if you watch closely, there are some earlier interactions with Mel and Meg
Yeah.
where that it's setting up for this. Very subtle, but it's there if you look for it. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? This is absolutely a good when you were talking about the HR department, I'm like, well, here's like the ultimate HR violation here. Like you really should like
I
Meg's
mean,
weird. Mel should not accept this.
indeed.
you know,
Well,
like
yeah, the HR department is really going to get interested in Mel when he beats the shit out of one of the
yeah,
campers. But
yeah,
yes.
yeah, exactly. This probably isn't even gonna rate on
Uh-huh.
the on the
By the end
list.
of tonight, they're not even going to be worried about that.
Yeah. And obviously Meg's initiating this whole thing, so it's
Right.
not like entirely Mel's fault, but
Yeah.
like it is his job to be like,
Yeah.
no, like
In a
no.
yeah, a generation later, Meg would have been sent to a therapist,
Yeah, yeah.
who would have a diagnosis for wanting to sleep with Mel.
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, that's a good point actually. Maybe it's just a manifestation of Meg's pathology. Like
Yeah,
something is wrong with her.
Meg was molested by her father or
Yeah,
something. Like,
yeah.
there's just something, like,
Some horrible thing. Yeah.
you aren't like a good-looking 18-year-old girl and you go after like a 60-year-old man with a pot belly and a polyester suit.
I know. I know. It's utterly absurd. Okay. So, let's see. Just to pick up here, Meg goes to take a shower for the date, but there's a line. Angela watches her leave, notably.
Mhm.
Meg showers in another cabin, and we see a figure enter with a knife. Incidentally, I think the knife is actually Mozart's knife.
I thought so too.
That's why they introduced the knife.
Yeah.
That's just a small point, but
Really
anyway.
not necessary, and query how she got the knife.
It is so not necessary, and of course, it's
Like, the
never
counselor
shown.
probably should have done a better job of hiding that knife.
Yeah. Come on, Gino. Hide it
Gino!
better.
That was a terrible accent. I apologize.
All right. Yeah, so we see a figure enter with a knife. Meg is stabbed in the back through the shower curtain, the shower
It
wall. I
looks
wasn't.
like the shower wall.
Yeah, can you like? That's some flimsy ass shower. Like, what the
It's
fuck?
the cheapest drywall on the market.
Yeah, I guess that's what it's supposed to be.
I
It's
don't know.
weird.
It was
It's weird.
amusingly over the top.
Very amusingly over the top for sure. And then the killer washes off the blade and turns the water off very
For
thoughtfully.
yeah,
We mustn't waste water in all
yes.
this.
Conserve water by all, at all cost.
Uh,
It is a little odd that she bothers to rinse off the knife, but
it is. Yeah, it seems unnecessary, but
she's completely unconcerned about fingerprints.
there's really, yeah, and like based on where we end things, like it's she's not really hiding things
Yeah, that's
in
true.
the end here. Like it feels like she's going into end game mode in
Yeah.
this sequence, and she's gotten it all. Everything's gonna be
Yeah.
finished now. I'm gonna get everyone who wronged me tonight.
Yeah.
It seems like that's the point. Um, okay. So Eddie takes the little campers camping. He's not into it. That's all I wrote. We'll come back to that. Um, Paul meets Angela coming out of the rec room. She asks about Ricky. Paul apologizes again. Judy walks by with some other boy. She looks away. That's Angela looks away and says, "Meet me at the waterfront after the social." And he agrees. And this is one of those shots where she's looking away from him, but the camera's
Yeah.
got her point of view. And when you know where this is going, it's like, ooh, yikes. She's clearly planning to kill him at this point.
Yeah.
Um,
Which I also just want to say, it's not just that he apologizes, but he insists that she forgive him,
yeah.
which is not a good way to apologize.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think another thing is like he apologizes for the thing with Judy and for calling her a prude.
Uh-huh.
He doesn't apologize for the thing at the beach. Like he sort of
Yeah.
apologized for that earlier, but like to me, like that was the bigger I don't know. Anyway, I feel like he had more to apologize for than he really did. And you're right, he's like weirdly pushy
He's like,
about
I'm
it.
sorry, you have to forgive me.
Yeah. 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 No,
Okay.
I think the point of view of the movie is that he earns his death, by being this way. That's how it seems to me at least. Because I think like you said earlier, like in general, the people who die are people who wronged Angela in one way or another.
Yeah,
And
it's
Ricky doesn't die,
interesting.
of course. Or Ronnie, like,
Oh,
or
right,
Susie, the
right.
people who are nice to her, like, don't end up dying. And I think she thought Paul was nice to her, but she eventually turns on him.
Which is maybe what makes what he did worse than, because it's like his death is really gruesome.
It is, yeah.
Whereas these other deaths I don't know, they were, like, more overtly horrible. Like, what they did was more, blatantly bad.
Yeah,
But with Peter, he was also, um
Paul.
sorry, Paul, right,
Peter is the
right, Peter's
brother.
the brother, right,
Yeah.
right, Paul. With Paul, he was also kind of like, she trusted
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it is more about betrayal than it
yeah,
is about how bad what he did was relative to the other ones. Like, I feel like that's why it's like this one's personal.
yeah,
And so it actually ends up being worse than the other ones, even if, like, yeah, from an outside point of view, it's like, well, really? Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, some of them didn't seem as bad. Okay. Uh, so so one of the kids is so over, with Eddie and the kids. Um one of the kids is cold and complains to Eddie wanting to go back. Eddie agrees to take a couple of them back, leaving the others there sleeping soundly.
with a hatchet.
Killer POV at this point on the sleeping kids, and the killer looks at the hatchet, which they set up earlier, um to yeah,
Yeah.
presumably be the murder weapon, because those kids threw some.
Yeah, these are the ones where it's just sort of like, really?
It does seem, yeah, it does seem like a bit much in terms of the, yeah. Like that's a very, very minor infraction
Yeah,
relative
so
to
that's when
everyone
it's like it
else.
just really gets absurd.
Yeah, yeah, this part is absurd for sure. Um, okay. So Mel arrives at the rec center and asks Susie about Meg, who didn't show up for their quote meeting. Um
Yeah.
Okay, Mel. Anyway, Judy makes out with the asshole boy, but he kisses, quote, too wet. Mel arrives, and the boy hides under the bed. Mel's looking for Meg. Judy tells him that she was taking a shower a while ago in the cabin next door. So Mel leaves. And then Mike, I guess, who's the other boy, comes out from under the bed and wants to leave so as not to get caught. Judy berates him about it as he leaves. Kicking shit.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
this is
Very charming, Judy.
yeah, you enjoy her rejection. Like, wow,
Yeah,
Judy
yeah.
you can't even give it away.
Yeah, 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 totally. I guess that's, yeah. Even though I think his point's valid, like it's like very easy to get caught in this circumstance, and like Mel was just there, and like anyway. Um, okay. So not that like Mel has any leg to stand on for anything at this point, but anyway, so Mel arrives at the other cabin looking for Meg. He goes in the shower and her body falls out in a way that I have no ability to understand physically.
There's really no explanation for how that could
It's
happen.
it's totally, but like, how was she standing up the whole time, and then how did she fall like this? Like, just like
Yeah.
what? I don't understand.
It was the air current of the door opening
Ah,
disrupted the sun.
was it? Maybe it was gas pockets.
There you go.
Okay. So so her body falls out, and then Mel has a dramatic soliloquy
Yeah.
about Meg and how he'll get revenge on Ricky for this. Oh, Meg. Oh, what have they done to you, Meg? I'll get him for this, Meg. I'll kill him for you, Meg. It's like so ridiculous.
It's pretty over the top.
It
It
really
is one of the several instances in the movie of real over the top acting.
It really is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like here, like Mel probably gets the closest to Aunt Martha's over the topness. Not there, not there, but
No.
the closest as far as other characters, because this is like a totally absurd scene. It's like really hard to take seriously. 'Cause it's just like, why is this monologue so long? You know, in a normal version of this movie, it would be a quick thing. Like he would see
Uh-huh.
it. Oh my god, I'm gonna get him. It would just be some
Yeah, yeah.
short thing, but they turn it into this very long scene. Anyway, okay. So he's gonna get revenge on Ricky for this because he's sure Ricky's the killer.
Uh-huh.
All right. So then Judy curls her hair. I mean, only a small part of
Just
it,
a
as you pointed out, just that little chunk sticking out
chunk.
on the side. The door opens. It's the killer. The killer enters. We get a POV shot. The killer hits Judy in the face, knocking her out for a bit, and then grabs the curling iron and with a pillow over her head, does something with the curling iron. We only see Judy's hand in shadow. The killer hides her body under the bed. So I really like this one because this one is also stylistically interesting with these
Yeah.
shadow hands on the
Yeah.
wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like that feels like something that could have been in like a silent
And you
movie
see
or
her
something.
open the curling iron clamp in the shadow,
Oh yeah,
which is
right.
really nice.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
it's a pretty terrifying idea, somebody like muffling your screams with a pillow while burning you with a curling
Yeah, yeah,
iron.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I like the touch that you see where the curling iron has burned the blanket.
Oh, I didn't notice that
Yeah,
actually.
because the curling iron, when she punches her, she drops the curling iron on the
Hmm.
blanket.
Right.
And then when
Oh,
the killer picks it up, you see
oh, and they actually showed it burnt. Wow.
yeah.
Hey, you know what? They got some
It's
details in
nice.
this.
It's
They paid
nice.
attention sometimes, or maybe it was just real. I don't know. But anyway, seems not impossible
Yeah,
that
they
like
actually killed all those
it
people.
was actually, yeah, they're all dead now, and no, but
It's a
it's
pretty
fine.
bad gig.
They died for art, you know.
Well, fair enough. We all have to die. You may as well die for art.
Okay. So yeah, I feel like this is like it's like yeah, it feels like classic Hollywood in a way because
Yeah.
we don't see what's happening. It's
Yeah.
all implied so we just get these shadows and it's just like, yeah, I
Hmm.
don't know. It's like there's times where I'm like, wow, good cinema, y'all. In a movie that's like we just came off this Mel monologue. It's like the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And I feel like that's the other part that sort of reminds me of Lynch at times, that like swinging of moods from
Yeah.
like the totally silly to the like kind of creepy and like really effective. Like I
Yeah.
don't know. It's not on that level, but it's like, sort of in that vein. I don't
Yeah.
know. Okay. So Eddie comes back and the kids have been murdered
God.
and he throws up and then he runs for help. And then Ricky arrives at the rec room, but the social's over. He goes in to get something to eat and then walks out with a bunch of candy. He got sick from the dinner earlier,
Yeah.
so he's
So
gonna have
he's
some
gonna
candy
settle his
to
stomach with 5 candy
he's got a
bars.
shitload of candy.
Yeah.
Like that's what you did in the 80s, you know? I feel like that was the thing, like,
Hmm.
oh man, dinner made me sick. Let me
Yeah,
have a
it was
shitload of
It's
candy.
totally. It was before the invention of like Brat. It was before the
Yeah,
invention of the food pyramid. And I
yeah.
don't mean Brat like the chartreuse thing. I mean, what is it? Brown rice,
Oh, I thought you were talking
toast,
about like hot bread summer or whatever.
yeah, no, not hot Brat summer. No, I'm talking about, the thing that you're supposed to do when you actually have an upset stomach.
Oh,
It
brown
isn't.
rice
Yeah, yeah.
and
I don't know, avocado?
tablespoons. Oh,
I
okay.
don't know what the A is. I don't know. I just do brown rice.
Avocados and
No, no, no,
tortillas,
no, no. It's bananas, rice, something, and
anchovies
toast.
and
Stop.
toast.
All the A stands for all the candy bars.
Well, then he's doing it
Yeah,
right.
you're right. I'm wrong.
No,
Uh,
I don't know. I don't know bread. Oh,
applesauce.
applesauce. Okay.
Applesauce.
Bananas, rice, applesauce, and toast.
Yeah, dry toast. Nothing on it.
Dry
Okay, none of
toast.
that avocado toast,
Okay.
millennial.
Yeah, you can't have that. Sorry.
Although I think avocado would probably be
Have it
fine.
late. No, have it later.
Have
It's
it
too
later.
it's too heavy.
Have it later. Have it
Have it
tomorrow
later.
morning.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
This podcast has been longer than the movie, and we're not even done.
Is that true? It
Yep.
is true. We're not done, but we're very close actually. Right. He goes in to get something to eat and then walks out with candy. We follow Ricky walking back to his cabin. Ronnie gets a call about the kids. Mel grabs Ricky and takes him into the woods and slaps him around, thinking he's the killer. Um, Ronnie
It's a
tells,
wild scene.
yeah, and he's like pounding him with
Yeah,
both
he's just
hands. It's like
beating, and
you
it's
see him
very
later. He's like
yeah.
severely beat up. Like they thought he was dead at first. And
I
it's
think
like,
it's interesting in movies when people are beating someone up in a really inelegant, clumsy way.
mhm.
Like just visceral, like pounding them.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's not. Yeah, it's not
It's
like
like the opposite of like Marvel or
Yeah,
something,
yeah, yeah.
There's no skill.
It's not elegant combat. It's definitely
Right.
like if Mel was gonna try to beat someone to death, like this is
Yeah.
how he would do it. It's very sloppy.
Yeah.
But like, but still like, what are you like
His
seriously?
heart is in it.
Like you don't have any proof and you're just like gonna go for a beating? Like, okay. Anyway, but that's Mel
That's
for
what
you.
happens. Yeah.
Okay. So Ronnie tells another counselor to get everyone. Mel finishes with Ricky saying he, quote, got him, but then tries to get away, running into the killer on the archery range. He gets
Oops.
an arrow through the throat, and he
It's
does say, it
so
can't be you.
it's so good. Yeah, yeah, totally. When he stumbles into that clearing and you see the bullseye, you're like, immediately you know what's
Yep.
gonna happen.
Yep. And
It's
there's an archery scene in Friday the
beautiful.
13th too, and I feel
Oh
like
yeah.
that's like it's like a slasher staple because you have those at a summer camp, and it's like a fun way to have characters die,
Yeah.
and they do the thing. You know how they do the arrow through the throat thing? Like it's like there's the arrow's on a string.
Okay.
There's no it's like there's no head to it,
Oh,
and
okay.
there's a retractable thing back here.
Uh-huh.
So they sink it. So the thing comes on the string, hits him
Uh-huh.
in the throat here, and then the thing pops out in the back to make it look
Oh,
like it went through his
nice.
throat. Like that's how they did that. Anyway, I just think that
Nice.
stuff's interesting because it looks surprisingly
It
convincing
does, yeah.
for a
Um,
cheaper
I like
movie.
knowing that. When I was a kid, I used to have this thing that was like a headband and it had an arrow to make it look like you'd had an arrow
Yeah,
shot
yeah,
through your
yeah,
head.
yeah,
I thought it
yeah.
was so cool.
It's just like that,
Um,
pretty much.
there's also this thing in there when they're explaining how to play capture the flag, one of the counselors is using that old trick. Do you know what I'm talking about? He's like pretending that he's putting the flag down
Oh
the
yeah, yeah,
throat,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
he's just like
I
putting
think
it
that
in
was
so
Gino actually.
anyway, it's the kind of thing that, when you see it, it's like nostalgic to see that kind of thing because yeah.
Yeah,
Um but it also reminds me of this like, trick photography thing.
yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. It's definitely a
it's like
classic
classic
old
illusions,
school
physical,
gag.
yeah,
And
physical
and
effects,
like the other guy is like
practical effects.
interrupts him and like
Yeah.
asks him to explain the game. He's like, oh ha ha ha,
Yeah, and he
like
just like yeah, the facade is immediately dropped. Yeah.
yeah. He was just doing that in the background. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
like unnecessary again. Like it's like, but it adds
It
something.
does add something, and one thing it is just sort of like feels realistic,
Yeah,
because
totally.
yeah, the counselors are goofing around.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, trying to like make the best of this like disaster of summer camp at this
Right.
point.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, so Mel gets shot through the
And we
neck.
get definitive proof that it's not Ricky.
Right.
Like if we thought it was Ricky, we know we can cross him off the list.
Right.
And I feel like the only other suspect that I might have, I mean, there's other suspects that like would be, if they want to surprise us and do a reveal, but in terms of like what the movie shows, I feel like Paul's the only other one that I might suspect was the killer. That he is
Yeah.
in that scene with the fake killer POV, that's him. And
Mhm.
that's the one where she's like, I
Yeah,
thought you were the
yeah.
killer.
That's
And the
yeah.
idea that he would try
That's
to
some
do that for Angela,
misdirection.
like that seems like I like in retrospect, no, obviously that's not true. But anyway, I'm just thinking like what
Yeah.
else would I be thinking at this point? Even though I do think like Angela's the killer is the most reasonable thing, but it's hard for me not to think that at this point.
Yeah, it's hard to remember back to when you first see
Yeah,
something.
yeah. Okay. So then Frank the cop arrives. Ronnie says there's a killer loose. Frank has everyone look around. I just have to point out here that just a weird behind the scene detail. I don't know if you noticed this, but like there's an earlier scene when Frank comes for the first time with the guy in the canoe, you know, um that's the first time we see him, and he has a mustache. So like behind the scenes, between the filming of those two scenes, or they had to do reshoots, I'm not sure which, he shaved his mustache, had to come back. So he's got this fake
It's
mustache
so
on.
fake
Did
looking.
you? Okay, you
Yeah.
know this how bad it is,
It's
right?
really bad.
It's like one of the worst fake
Yeah.
mustaches I've ever seen on
The
film.
Blu-ray really, like the detail, it's extraordinary. It reminds me of a mustache that I got for very cheap for a Halloween costume.
That is absolutely what it looks
Yeah,
like.
like you can see the like netting or whatever that
Yeah,
you use to tape it to your face.
yeah.
I love it though. Why not?
It's
You
it's
see some bad wigs in TV and movies.
Yeah. I think for this movie, it's fitting and it works. But I also think like they could have just had him not have a mustache. Like, who cares? He shaved between the scenes. Like, it doesn't,
Yeah.
like, why? Like,
Yeah.
it just seems so
It used to
unnecessary.
bother me when I would watch TV and it would be the end of season and then the start of the next season and it's supposed to be like the next day, but their hair is really
Totally different.
different.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
Yeah, that always happens. That's just a
I
production
mean, never
problem.
mind all the suspension of disbelief that was required for the shows that I was watching. Somehow that was too much for me.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
oh, okay,
yeah.
yeah, we're talking Star Trek, or like X-Files. Like I'm believing this alien conspiracy, but like Scully's hair is shorter than it was supposed to be.
It bothers me too, though. I understand. I don't know. There is something. It's like you buy into the world and the strangers within the
Yeah.
world, but it's like, yeah, but hair doesn't grow overnight, or hair
Mhm.
doesn't grow in like seconds, you know.
Right.
So it's just like it does like show the artifice, or like kids too. Like kids grow up too much,
Well,
you know.
that's a whole other
I mean,
problem.
we had that on From, it's like
Yeah.
they're just too old, and it's been like a week, and
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, it really shouldn't have been a problem here, but yeah, I think something happened. Either he didn't get the memo, or yeah. Anyway, I'm not sure what the story is, but yeah, it's just a hilariously bad mustache. There's one close up where you really see
Yeah.
it, and it's worst glory.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm gonna say it works because I think for this movie,
Yeah.
it's like. Yeah, sure, why not? He's got a horribly bad mustache at the end. It's fine.
It's great. I love
Um,
it. Bring it on.
Bring it on, exactly. Okay. So Paul waits at the waterfront for Angela. Angela appears and says, "Let's go swimming, not in our clothes." And they both start to undress as we cut to Frank the cop and Gino searching. They find Ricky. He's still alive. They carry him back to the camp. They couldn't kill Ricky off. They could have. They could have had Mel kill him, but they choose not to. He actually survives this movie. One of the few redemptive characters in this movie, as I said earlier. Okay, so we hear a scream. A counselor found Meg. Frank comes outside, bewildered. This is when we get the close up of the
Mhm.
mustache. So that's the point where you can go look for it. If you want to pull it up, I'm sure you could Google it too. Okay. So Susie and Ronnie go look for Angela, Judy, Ricky, and Paul, who are missing for reasons,
Mhm.
various
Different
reasons.
reasons, yeah.
Um, Ronnie hears something like singing. So they go over, and we see a naked Angela holding Paul's head in her lap. Ronnie calls out to her as we get a flashback. And in the flashback, we have Aunt Martha talking to what turns out to be Peter right after the accident. He's got a bandage on his head, and Ricky is away. She comments on that as well. Again, going back to the point I made earlier about he was with his father for the weekend, so he didn't witness any of this. Um, she didn't want two boys, so she insists that Peter become Angela. And so we get a hard cut to Angela holding Paul's severed head, naked, and we see that she has a penis. Ronnie exclaims that she's a boy, and we cut to her frozen screen face with growling sounds as we go to the end credits. And that's the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's a crazy shot. Um, yeah,
Yeah, so it was
yeah.
a prosthetic.
Angela, it means angel.
Yeah, Yeah.
that's a great line given what we're about to cut back to.
Definitely,
Um,
definitely. Yeah, I think that was
yeah,
very deliberate for sure.
yeah. This I pointed this out when we were watching it. This idea that you come upon someone holding cradling a severed head
Yeah.
and you say, "Oh my god, she's a boy." Not, "Oh my
Yeah.
god, she's holding a severed
Yeah, yeah,
head.
yeah,
Oh my god, she decapitated Paul."
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I feel like it's more what they want the audience to say than what the characters actually should be saying.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Like, because that's what they want us to focus
It
on.
is certainly a reveal.
Definitely. Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and it's not something you see every day in cinema.
Definitely not. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely think in the spirit of this movie, it makes sense that they would go there. So I have a few comments to make about this.
I bet you do.
Um, because, after that earlier flashback, which actually to me is the most interesting, this is probably the second for me notable like thing about this movie that's like touching on something that is real, but that like the movie is treating in a way that is definitely dated. And I think it's worth pointing out that um, in slasher lore, and I mean specifically in Men, Women, and Chainsaws, like the fairly famous book that has, among other things, a chapter about slasher movies and like specifically about the gender dynamics in slasher movies and how there is a trope there of like some kind of gender confusion in the killer as a partial motive or something like that, and in the book it's like traced back to Psycho, where you have Norman Bates and like his mother, who's dead, revealed to be dead at the end, but he's taking her identity,
Right,
dressing up as her and doing these murders,
right.
and like that planted the seed that kind of grew into more versions of this later. There's Brian De Palma's like copycat movie Dressed to Kill with Michael Caine, um, in a similar dynamic that's like sort of updated, updated for the 70s. Um, but he's like dressing up as a woman and doing murders, and like that gender confusion is part of it. What is interesting to me about those two, because I actually think this is somewhat less common. This particular thing, I mean, there's gender dynamics in every slasher movie for sure, but specifically gender confusion of the killer isn't something that happens in every movie. Like, um, Halloween doesn't really have this.
Right,
Nightmare
right,
on Elm
right.
Street doesn't really have this. Friday the 13th doesn't have this. The killer actually is a woman in that case. Um, I guess you could argue when she speaks with Jason's voice that like actually the writer of Friday the 13th did say it was specifically an inversion of the Psycho thing.
Mm,
Instead of the son
that
taking the
sounds about right.
mother's sort of, it's the mother taking the son's kind of like not necessarily, I feel like it's not quite that, but anyway, that it's like sort of there.
Uh-huh.
Um,
It's like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
yeah. Texas Chainsaw Massacre has a bit of it, definitely. Like Leatherface dresses in
Yeah.
women's clothes at a certain point. So, and there's like a weird family thing happening, and like the gender stuff is part of it for sure. So yeah, it's definitely it's there, but it's not in all of them. But I think there is. I think that's what they're pulling from, at least in part, like that heritage.
Uh-huh.
Um, but the point I wanted to make about it is that at least in the case of Psycho and in the case of Dress to Kill, which is copying Psycho, so it's like it barely counts as separate. But anyway, um, uh, it is the female part that is the the providing the killer impulse, you know, the female part within the confused man, or perhaps he is supposed to be some kind of transgender. You know, they didn't speak in those terms back then, so they don't say anything like that. But whatever you're supposed to think, it is the female part that is the um, uh, driver of the murderous impulse. You know, and in this case I feel like we're invited to think it's actually the other way around. I can't say for sure because they don't say this, but I feel like because the reveal is, oh my God, she's a boy, we're seeing a penis, we're getting this, you know, big reveal of the killer, that they are suggesting it's actually the sort of male side of Angela that is doing the murderous rage. Like, at least to me, it seems like you
Yeah.
could read it that way.
Yeah, I could see that.
I don't know for sure if that's what they're implying, but like at the very least, it doesn't seem to me like Angela has in a way discarded the you know, she's revealing herself fully, and so it feels like it isn't the female part of Angela that is doing the murder here, you know, like it seems like she's sort of dropped that in this place, and I think maybe um that's what we're supposed to. So anyway, in that sense, it is a bit different from those other ones, and because it isn't you know it is uh it is something that is forced upon her, you know, in the case of Norman Bates and Michael Caine's character in Dressed to Kill, this is something they just do of their own accord because, you know, I mean, there's like background stuff, but they aren't forced to do it.
Right.
You know, no one forces them to put on those clothes
Right.
and do, you know, but like she is actually forced to do this by Aunt Martha, who is clearly a deeply disturbed person,
Yeah.
and we only understand fully how disturbed by the end, right? Because like the opening scene, she's weird and quirky and unsettling, but she doesn't do anything
Yeah.
overtly horrible in
Yeah.
that opening scene,
Yeah.
you know. But then when you see this, it's like, oh, okay, so the pathology is deep there,
Yeah.
you know, having to do this, and you know, opinions. So I've read a number of articles and listened to a number of podcasts about this. You know, like I said at the beginning, I'm no expert. Don't treat me as any kind of authority on this topic. I'm just repeating things and saying my own point of view. That's all I got. So anyway, as a disclaimer, but there's various points of view out there about this. There is the acknowledgement that I think is undeniable that, you know, the incongruity of the penis and the character that we're meant to think of as girl or feminine is part of the horror that they're presenting to us. So it is using that kind of imagery to disturb us. I think that's undeniable.
Yeah.
So, and I think that is part of what, you know, that's why horror movies are going to that trope, because it has had that effect on people, and continues to. I mean, this is still a thing to this day for sure, that like there are many people who are horrified by that idea.
I mean, penises are disturbing anyway.
Fair enough. And you definitely don't see them in movies every day, so it's
Yeah.
like it's quite unusual to have a movie end with that
Yeah.
as a major closing shot.
Hmm.
um so like that I think most agree on.
And like a nude child is also scary, and the
Yeah,
severed head. Like the
yeah,
whole, it's a
it was
very,
actually an adult who did the
of
body
course.
thing, just
Of
for the record.
course. No, I
It
understand
was
what
like a
you mean.
mask.
Yeah, it doesn't look that convincing, honestly.
I feel like it's pretty good considering how low budget it
Yeah,
is.
but the neck is really too long.
But I agree, you can tell. Yeah. You can
But
tell what they're
it's,
doing.
yeah, it's
I actually feel like the artificial nature of it like
makes
makes
it
it extra
scarier.
unsettling.
Yeah, it's really unsettling.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, yeah, I guess it works for me on that level.
Yeah.
But you know, opinions differ about the implication of like you said at the beginning, like the fact of being transgender makes you a murderous person, like just that idea that like is sort of there, or like if you're doing that, you must be really disturbed, you know. Um, but there is the other point of view out there that I think is like somewhat valid, that because even though it's this is an 80s context, because she is forced into it, you can actually read it the other way, that it's about being forced to live
Yeah, right,
as a
right.
gender that you don't identify with,
Right,
that
right.
is the rage.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's ambiguous deliberately. I only issued that comment at the beginning because to acknowledge that there exists and it still exists. It's not just a thing of the past, this idea that there is something sinister about transgender people. I don't think that this character in this movie like fits parameters of a trans person in a tidy way because she's being forced to, as you're saying, like she's not living the life that she feels is appropriate to her. She's being
Yeah,
forced by this like, but then there's also this, and Psycho kind of gets at this idea of the kind of this sinister relationship with a mother character,
yeah,
like the sinister mom perverting the um the quote unquote natural masculine trajectory of a son,
yeah,
uh causing him to become violent.
yeah,
Like that's another
yeah,
trope that's out there. I mean,
definitely.
this is the relationship with this aunt character is clearly not a healthy one,
I,
to
I
say,
should say
to
so.
to put it mildly.
Yeah, yeah,
um but I think that the movie does an interesting job of not giving of just not making it clear how we're supposed to interpret what got us to here, and how much
yeah,
of that is, this kind of subconscious disturbance of like, if somewhere inside of her there's this straight boy who's being forced to present as a straight girl and is now in this like very gendered, very confusing um sort of coming of age trope of the summer camp,
mhm,
like what that is unlocking for her, plus just all this, bullying that
yeah,
she's being subjected to.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
um
yeah, yeah. And pretty much all of it without knowledge, like none of them know, like they're just taking it at
right,
face value.
right, and this is the only life that she's known. I mean, she's trying to make sense of, like, she's trying to navigate the the yeah, the identity that she's been forced into.
Yeah,
And and like she knows things. She knows enough to know like I can't take showers with the other girls,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I can't let this guy feel me
yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah,
Um
yeah. Yep,
but
and she's only ready to take her clothes off
when
when
she's ready to
she's
kill
gonna do a
him.
murder. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, which again is off screen. They don't have us watch that. Of course, it makes sense in the way they want to do the reveal. But another thing I wanted to say about your comment, just to add on, I do think that thing is there, Aunt Martha playing this mother figure, like warping, but like her point was, I already have a boy, and her other boy is Ricky, and like I mean, in terms of this movie,
Right.
like he's one of the better
Yeah, I
characters,
mean Ricky seems really well
and he doesn't
placed
really seem to
in
have any
keeping.
so it's like, it's like it's
Yeah, it isn't the same stereotype of like men are bad, so I'm gonna not let, or like
yeah,
if you become a man, then you're gonna grow up and leave me, and I need
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's a very flimsy and weird like obsession with symmetry. It's like, well, I already
yeah,
have a boy. I don't want two. So you should be a girl. Like that's it. That's the explanation.
yeah,
It's like So it's like, yeah, I feel like that doesn't, you know, I don't know. It doesn't lend itself as well to, you know, some of that tropier stuff, even though it is like, you know, hinting or at least playing in those waters, you know, for sure.
Yeah.
But like the wider context means like, I think it wasn't just that, you know, like she was fine having a boy and letting the boy be a boy as normal, more or less. And like, but yeah, she's like, was so warped that, I mean, it's someone who's like family just died, and then you're gonna be like, now, I mean, it's just, it's ridiculous. It's hard. I mean, it's at the heart of the thing, and that's where, you know, um, I, you know, I wonder about the stew, you know, that's going into these murders. Like we get this reveal, and I do feel like the reveal invites us to think this is the reason. This is the thing we didn't know that explains why these murders are happening. And I think, you know, I'm fine with that. It just seems notable that that wasn't the only bad
Yeah,
thing that
and I
happened
don't
to
think that
Angela.
exactly. I don't think that most of the murders need an explanation. Most of them, it's like, yeah, well, she did the thing to the chef because he
Yeah.
tried to rape
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
her,
yeah, 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 yeah.
and he, you know, she kills Meg because Meg is just like a relentless
Peckerhead.
peckerhead. I was about to drop the C word.
Oh, I see.
Uh, she's just so awful, you know, just
Yeah,
bullying her. I
definitely
mean,
awful. Yeah, yeah,
anyway, I
yeah.
but the the situation with Paul m- perhaps warrants this more um specific
Hmm.
context, if
Yeah,
not like justification, but
right,
context
right.
of like, you know, the stripping
That's
naked,
what brings that out.
the sort of cradling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. And that's the other thing I was gonna say. Like, is there a sense in which, you know? And again, like, it's hard for me to talk about this because, you know, the frame of this movie is like totally dated. So like the way I'm talking about it sounds sounds very callous. So anyway, I just want to acknowledge that. But anyway, I'm just gonna say it because I feel like this is in the movie. So like the idea that she's really a boy, right? This is the way they frame it at the end, right? And then the flashback to the gay father, you know, it's like, is there a sense in which, you know, like Peter actually would have been gay, but now he's living in this mode of being a straight girl,
Right.
you know, like that's like
Right,
a
right.
layer of the
This,
confusion.
yeah, that there is like there could be this potential for a you know, a romantic relationship between Peter and Paul, but
Yeah,
Paul knows Peter as Angela, and Peter has been living as
yeah,
Angela. But I
yeah,
mean, at the end of the day, you know, we're following a child who has been the victim of 8 years
yeah,
of
yeah,
abuse, and um like the idea that a first brush with romance would call to mind whatever prior points of reference she has for romance
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
And the idea that one of those be, because I don't think Aunt Martha's getting a lot of dates. um
Oh boy, yeah,
so if, you know, this idea of like, well, you know, maybe we can, you know, some, I don't know, it's not like the Crying Game or something,
mhm,
but yeah, I don't know. It's a stew. But you know, I like the ambiguity of it.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
weird. It's a
yeah. And
very weird movie. Tonally, it's weird thematically. Yeah.
to go from this family tragedy that we open a movie with to this, you know, into the arms of Aunt Martha, Like immediately, right? He's got the
Yeah.
bandages on
Trauma. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. The trauma.
when
Yeah.
that's
But
happening.
then,
So that's why I feel like that opening scene is part of the thing. It's just not the only thing, you know.
yeah.
And obviously it's, this other stuff goes on for longer and so on. So
Yeah. No, it's just weird that it happens. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, exactly where I don't know. Again, like I said, throughout, like it's one of the things that keeps me coming back to it, aside from the general enjoyment, because the movie is surprisingly fun for like the dark places it goes sometimes. Like a lot of it is like it could just be like a dated, fun, like 80s teen summer camp comedy. Like it feels like it almost wants to be that movie sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
When it's not really acting like it's a slasher movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it does wade into those waters, it does so in a way that is sort of like, yeah, it has more subtlety than I would expect, given like the tone of some of the scenes of the movie. And so I do appreciate that because yeah, it really lets you fill in a lot of gaps, and I just appreciate that because it's just not normal. There's, if you watch a lot of slashers, like, usually it's explained, or at least like, um you know we're not really supposed to have it, it's like, um Michael Myers was always just evil personified, like there's no thing where it's like, oh, this is why he's bad.
Yeah. But I like that, like Freddy Krueger, it's the opposite. It's like, here's your really specific explanation.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know, I find that a little bit limited.
I think it's like there's an explanation for like what he's doing now, but there's still no explanation for like why is he bad, because he was bad before, you know.
Yeah, I just mean motive wise.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not necessarily like, I think the human mind craves a clear motive, but then once you get it, it's sometimes too reductive.
I think what I like about Nightmare on Elm Street, like the original, is that you are invited to believe that the point is to come back after the kids who did this vigilante murder. And I think that works. And I think that is true. But the movie doesn't say that out loud ever. Freddie never says it. And it was interesting watching the remake because like he just went on and on about it. Like it was like, shut up, Freddie.
Yeah,
Oh my
and that's what I'm talking
God.
about. Like, that's just not boring. That's not interesting. And people say they want clear answers, but it's actually not good when you get
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, your larger point I take, like I do love Nightmare on Elm Street in its own way, but I think like it is not as rich as this movie is.
Yeah.
For sure. It does its thing. I think it does it well, but it's a simpler movie by
Yeah.
far. And it's like, there were so many disposable 80s slashers, that like you watch and it's like
Yeah.
whatever, it's doing a formula, and I just think like accidentally or on purpose, I think a bit of both. Like they just really did something special with this movie,
Yeah.
that really stands out from that pack. Like it's good luck. I mean, I've done searches, like I've wanted to find more movies like this, and there's very few.
Yeah.
It's not a thing that happens all the time, and yeah, so I really appreciate it on that level.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, I don't know,
Yeah,
maybe
I
that's
mean,
it.
yeah,
What
I think that's
Anything
good. I
else?
think that's pretty good. We went only an hour longer than the movie,
Hey, not
which I think
bad.
is pretty good.
Not bad.
I think the big takeaway is, summer camps, not a good idea.
Yep.
Send your kids to work,
Yep.
make them get summer jobs.
That'll be healthier probably.
Yeah.
Just make sure
Yeah.
they're not working for Mel.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Well, until next time.
Till next time.
Buzz,
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 buzz.
buzz.